So it's not like you can be a second choice in your third choice. I just completely I don't know, if you're going one for another, it's plan it out, and also it's crazy. It's very confusing. So I was looking at my list. And then they said, what is this?
There's certain sites that are blocked, but that's when you drive down the long one, so it's crazy. So I was like, but I guess I'm not mobile, so
I'm really trying to. We're right. I'm right here. So yeah, so I'm willing to try to. Yeah, it takes a lot of it. I've been to conferences my whole life. Yeah, no distinct pictures. You know, you share it with people. This is great news. And all you're doing is trying to
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the October meeting of the Eldridge Central School Board of Education. We start the meeting with the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We're going to start our meeting with a presentation from the Sullivan County Renaissance. Mr. Glenn Pontier.
That would be me. I want to say a couple words, and then I want to actually present a framed photograph of your project to the board. And obviously we want to have some of the people that were principals involved in this join in, and I want to be able to get a picture of that. So in order to do all that, I'm going to need some help. But before I do that, I wanted to just talk a little bit about Sullivan Renaissance and pass some of these things out. We're a beautification program that's been around for 16 years. All of this relates to the school, in part because you've been in it a couple of times. And so I'll just pass out some of these. It explains what it is. Take one and pass them on. And we do a lot of things, and we'd like to do more with the school. And you guys are the best. I mean, this is a terrific opportunity for us to, and we're a privately funded beautification program, so this isn't taxpayer money. This is money that's coming from Alan and Sandra Gary, and a project really to encourage the spirit of people that live in Sullivan County. One of the things we're going to be doing on November 4th is a little workshop at the CBI building, and it's called Let's Make Our Schools as Beautiful as Our Kids. You guys have a head start on that, but one of the teachers is going to be, from Eldridge, is going to be part of the panel. So I'll pass it in this direction, take one and pass them around. We also run a grant program where we give money to community organizations. So I'm going to pass a brochure that talks about our new programs for next year. And we run a video contest. And it's a $1,000 prize for a video that kind of talks about beautification and Sullivan Renaissance and community spirit. And we started it last year, and we had several adults that submitted videos. And we had some Monticello fourth graders that Jane Sorensen had helped submit videos. And the prime audience that I thought that would be submitting videos would be teenagers who take them all the time. And so this contest brochure was approved today. no one else has seen it. So I'm going to pass it to you, and take one or not if you want, and then you're able to, maybe you might know a 14-year-old or something that would want to make a video and have a chance of winning $1,000. I mean, this is, you can do a lot with video. Some of you know my son is a graduate of Holmesdale High School, but grew up here, went to the Homestead School, and earlier this month he won 2 Oscars for his film editing. And he started when he was about 14. So I'm telling you, this is good stuff. I also have my business card, which I'm going to pass around because I'm going to stop talking in a minute. So if you want to talk more about these things with me, you'll be able to do that. Sullivan Renaissance, and I've been with them for 16 years, has been encouraging schools and communities to do beautification projects. And it's a voluntary thing. People come to us and they apply and they have an idea. When we work with them, they submit a design for their garden, and that's reviewed by a panel of gardeners, people with horticultural experience. And then we gave a grant of $1,500 to help get the project started. Most projects cost more than $1,500. So the community then digs deep inside, and they either get monetary contributions or contributions of gravel or dirt, plants, soil, I guess is the word, right? And they get in-kind services. They get businesses to volunteer. So these are projects that aren't done by professionals. I mean, we're not hiring landscapers. These are projects done by volunteers. And this was there were 9 projects in the category that Eldred was competing in. They were competing for a first prize of $10,000, a second prize of $7,000, and a third prize of $5,000. And Eldred won third prize of $5,000. And I know, did you guys get the check yet? That's the check. All right. Because if you didn't, I would help make that happen. So you want to, there's obviously going to be some paperwork on how you spend that money. And it can't go into defraying your school budget. But what it is for something that you've always wanted to do that you've never been able to do. That's what the $5,000 is for. And I don't know what you designated that as, but this comes from an idea of you inspire people in a lot of ways, but if they can actually compete against their neighbors in a friendly way and do something better than their neighbors do, we reward them through the money that our foundation puts in with a monetary prize. And even if you lose, you win because you have a beautiful project that you've done. And in the 15 years that we've been running projects, this will be our 16th year, I can honestly say that I have never seen a school project as good as this one. And so, the school board would like to, yes, she should be, but I would like to get somebody from the school board as well, because we have a president.
Our president.
And then what I need is somebody that knows how to work this. Take a picture.
Oh, these lovely people.
So, I don't know where is the good part to do it. Where do you,
It's up to you guys.
do you usually take pictures someplace?
No, we're very shy.
Well, all right, well, why don't we come over here and we'll,
It's a beautiful picture.
well, that's easy when it's a beautiful project, right? That's the,
Nicely angled though.
yeah.
Here,
So,
and I'll just be on the side.
well, you can put, yeah, so. All right, well, so on behalf of Alan and Sandra Gary and Sullivan Renaissance and the Gary Foundation, I would like to present the school with this picture which memorializes your project. And I hope that next year and in years to come, the project, remember, planting a garden is like having a child. It never goes away. It's a lot of hard work, so we're going to need commitment. But I want you to know that we also run a maintenance program, so you can come back to us for help if you need it. So,
You being me, but I'll do that.
thank you.
Okay, our next presentation is our audit review from our auditors, Andrew Arias from Cooper Arias. I said your name right, didn't I?
You got it, perfect. I'm gonna stand over here, that way I don't have my back to anybody, it's a little bit easier. I think I know everybody on the board. I did meet earlier with the audit committee. We went over a lot of the stuff in the audit committee meeting in more detail. Some of the issues that maybe would have been verbal comments as opposed to written comments. This is just sort of going to be a broad overview of financial position of the district. You all have that sort of handout I gave you in front of you. That's what I'm going to talk from. It just gives some charts and graphs over the last few years for the district. Starting off, I was talking about, as the external audit, we're looking at the big picture of the school district. We're looking at the financial statements, and if anybody looks at those financials, state ed or taxpayer, would they be misled by the numbers? So that's really what our purpose is, to give an opinion on those financial statements. We also do a federal single audit. If your federal expenditures are over $500,000, it's a separate audit you get. On that threshold, next year will be going to $750,000, and it might be significant to LGIP because the current year you're at $600,000 in federal expenditures now. So that's a separate audit that includes internal controls and compliance, so you may be exempted from that in future years unless you get additional federal aid that puts you over that threshold of $750,000. I'm going to start off with one of the new items this year. Last couple of years talked a little bit about GASB 68, which is Government Accounting Standards, Board Statement 68, pension reporting, where now municipalities have to report a liability in their financial statements for the net present value of their pension liability going forward. It also can be a pension asset. Unlike the retiree health insurance that's been in the financials the last couple of years, the pension asset, the ERS and the TRS pension asset liabilities actually are funded. So if they're overfunded, you may show a net pension asset. If they're underfunded, you show a net pension liability. This is the district's proportionate share of the TRS system's liability and the ERS system's liability. That's how it's calculated. TRS does their audit. They come up with either pension asset or pension liability. Every district, based on their share of payroll for all the municipalities in the state, then share in that asset or liability. So when you look at the front page of the statement of net position, you're going to see a couple of new items in there. Pension asset, pension liability. You're going to see deferred inflows and outflows of resources. Just quickly going through those, your TRS pension asset is $3.6 million for the year. That's offset by $2.46 million of deferred inflows and outflows of resources. What the deferred inflows and outflows are has to do with timing issues. So in other words, if those numbers are affected by things like big movements in the stock market, changes in the proportionate share between different districts, changes in assumptions, they sort of offset it with like a counter asset or a counter liability, so you don't see tremendous swings from year to year just because the stock market did really good or really bad. So they sort of try to smooth it out. So that's what that other account you'll see, which is new in the financial statement, called deferred inflows and outflows of resources. Your share of the pension liability was $206,000, and that was offset by $35,000 deferred inflows of resources. So those are the new items that are on the balance sheet in your statement of net position. I do want to point out this is only your full accrual statements. So none of these numbers affect the general fund, your governmental fund. So you don't have to be concerned with them when it comes to tax levy, fund balance management, anything like that. And I do want to point out, when we talked about GASB 45, which is the retiree health insurance, I always talked about how that number can move drastically based on assumptions. So if the actuaries change the discount rate, that big liability can change drastically. One of the requirements for GASB 68 is we have to disclose how much this number that I just talked about would change if the discount rate changed 1% one way or the other. So in the note disclosure, it talks about that. And you'll see if you look in the financial statements, what it tells you is a 1 percentage point increase in the discount rate would increase the ERS liability by $1.17 million and decrease the TRS asset by over $3 million. So it just goes to show you how much those numbers can change if an actuary just changes the discount rate they're going to use. Instead of using 6, they use 5 or 7 or so forth. And the pension accruals, you use a discount rate of 7.5% for ERS and 8% for TRS. And the retiree health insurance accrual uses a 4.5%. So that just shows you that if these pension numbers were using the same discount rate as the retiree health insurance is using, these numbers, instead of being a $3 million asset, would likely be a huge liability. So again, just to let you know, take these numbers with a grain of salt. They're calculated with a lot of assumptions in terms of discount rates, rates of life expectancies. A lot of things go into these things, but they are big numbers on your audit reports.
Adrian, did you say a 1% increase or decrease in the discount rate?
A decrease. If the discount rate decreases, the liability goes up, because what they're doing is they're taking the net present value of a liability. So if it's a higher interest rate, that means you need less money now to reach that thing, because you're going to be earning a lot better interest rates. So, most of like the GASB 45 is even using 4%. ERS and DRS still use high discount rates, 7.5%, 8% seem like high discount rates. And how that can affect any municipality is if they decide, like right now TRS is showing the pension asset, which affects your contribution rates and how much you're going to contribute. If they decide to use a lower discount rate, that changes that pension asset to a pension liability. What that means is they need bigger contributions from the districts. So that's how that can affect you in an indirect way if they change those calculations. Okay, just go to the next page. Now we're going to the actual funds, the general fund balance. This chart here shows you your decreases in your general fund over the last 5 years. And you can see your total fund balance has come down significantly. And in the last few years, your reserves have also come down. Now, I always point out when I look at a chart like this, if you're in business and you saw a chart like this, it looks terrible. But municipalities are not running like businesses. This is what sometimes you're planning to do. If you're planning to bring your fund balance down, if you're appropriating fund balance, it means you want your fund balance to go down. So when you look at a chart like this, it doesn't necessarily mean, boy, we're going downhill. It's really what the board has been planning through budgeting. What they wanted to do is use up some of that fund balance. What I do point out when you look at a chart like this is at some point, you want to see it start leveling out. You can't continue to decrease at the same rate, so you want to keep an eye on that. As your total fund balance decreases, you just want to watch those reserves, because reserves are always a good fallback when your fund balance gets low to have reserves. It gets more difficult when you have a low fund balance and you have low reserves. And the next part shows two more components of fund balance, your appropriated fund balance, which is the dark blue. Now, if you remember back in 2011, that's when you gave all that money back from the repair reserve that went back to the taxpayers. So there was a large appropriated fund balance back in 2011. Since then, little by little, you brought down how much you're appropriating each budget. But as you can see, your unassigned fund balance has also gone down dramatically to under 1% this year. Now, what I always say is you like to see your unassigned fund balance be more than your appropriated fund balance. It's usually not a good position when you're appropriating more than your unassigned fund balance. In the case of this district, the relationship between those two numbers is really caused by the fact that you have a very low unassigned fund balance. You're not really appropriating too much money in next year's budget. We have some districts or towns who appropriate lots of money in the budget to sort of make it balance. The district is actually appropriating less than 4% of the subsequent year's budget. So if your unassigned fund balance was at 4%, which is the limit, you would be okay. You would be unassigned would be higher. So really, the district's goal is to bring up that unassigned fund balance, which is the money that you can use for any purpose. And this just sort of numerically shows the same activity we just saw. So you can see, looking at the numbers, your total fund balance and your restricted fund balance, how significant those numbers have gone down over the last 5 years, as well as the unassigned fund balance. And then the last year is that percentage of your next year's budget. That's where you're subject to 4% of the subsequent year's budget. And you can see over the last several years it has gotten very low. So when you look at that unassigned fund balance of 0.69%, just be aware that you do have reserves that you can use and you are using. But as those reserves get depleted, you have to be careful because you don't have that cushion in unassigned fund balance. And you're in a position right now, a lot of districts, it's very hard to build up fund balance. With tax cap now, being projected now, I believe next year it's going to be even lower, 0.5%, I believe it's going to go down to 0.73%, it's going to go to 0.5. It's very difficult for school districts to get in a situation, well, let's try to build up our fund balance, because it's just, the ability is just not there. So really, you're just trying to do is just tighten up as much as you can and keep your fund balance as level as you can. And the district is planning on using another $125,000 of the reserves in 2016. Make sure you're ready to plan on using that money out of your workers' comp reserve. You have some money in there, but even that, the last few years, you've used about $120,000 a year of that reserve, which has helped to offset some of the costs. But as you watch that reserve, potentially that reserve will be depleted also. And once that money's not available, you really have to plan for that ahead of time, not when that year comes when you've used the last 125. So you want to start sort of planning for that ahead of time. This is the district's budget over the last few years. You see back in 11 and 12 when your expenses were 5 and 7% under budget. When those kind of things happen, that's when you build up fund balance, because if you're missing your budget significantly, it's hard to manage fund balance. The last 3 years, the budget's been really good for the district. As you can see, you've been within 1.5%, 2%, and 0.14% of the budget. Ideally, your expenses are always gonna come in under budget, because as a school district, you can't spend more than the voters allow you to spend. So you're always gonna outperform the budget. The idea is how close you can get to that budget. So it's always gonna be a positive number, but you just wanna keep it in that 1-2% range, so you're not missing the budget significantly. And this just shows you general fund activity. This is your revenues and your expenses together. So if you look at the first column is your appropriated fund balance. That's pretty much what the district intended to use for the year. That would be what you appropriated in the budget, what you did a budget modification during the year to transfer money to capital or something like that. That's what you planned, and the net income is what actually happened. So you're sort of seeing every year you outperform the budget by a little bit. In the last 3 years, that's very good. You're talking about revenues and expenses combined as a percentage of the entire budget. To be within that 1%, 3%, and less than 1%, your budget over the last 3 years has been very, very close to what you're predicting. And that's really crucial when you have a low fund balance. When you have a low fund balance, you don't have a lot of room to play around. If you miss your budget significantly, you can find yourself in a deficit. So it's very important to have budgets that are accurate. And the bottom line just shows that the fund balance over the last 5 years, $3.28 million, you've used the fund balance, which is about 59% of your total fund balance has been used. But again, a lot of that has been planned by the district through appropriating fund balance. Next chart shows your school lunch fund. That was teetering around deficit for a couple of years. Over the last 3 years, it's moved into the deficit position where you have a deficit fund balance in your school lunch fund. The last 2 years, there's been about a $20,000 operating deficit per year. So really, at this point, the district needs to address how they're going to turn that around in the school lunch fund. And like I always said, there's really 3 options. You can raise prices, you can cut costs, or you can increase your transfers from the general fund. Those are your 3 options, and as a board, you have to look at those options and figure out which direction you want to go, because the school lunch can't just keep operating at an operating deficit. You have to turn that around. Doesn't mean you have to wipe the deficit out in 1 year, but you want to at least get it to an operating surplus, and then over time, you'll eliminate that deficit. And just pointing out, when you have an operating deficit in the school lunch fund, like this of $40,000, which is money the general fund has loaned them, that's another $40 the general fund can't spend, because the school lunch doesn't have to pay it back. So when you look at the thing, you'll see what we call non-spendable fund balance in your general fund of $40-some-odd thousand. That represents this deficit. This is money the school lunch has paid to them, and the general has loaned to them, but can't get paid back. If the school lunch starts running in an operating surplus and eliminates that deficit, what it'll do is it'll help the general fund at the same time, because now the general fund will have that $40,000 expense. So you'll get really more bang for your buck if you eliminate that deficit in the school lunch fund. One of the positives for the school districts with all the the tax cap and all that is the retirement costs. Finally this year, you're going to see decreases in the TRS and the ERS rates. The estimated TRS decrease is about 24% in 2016, and the ERS is about 8%. If you look at the chart, for the first time in many years, you're going to see decreases in your ERS and TRS expenses, and that should realize the savings based on current year payroll, things like that, about $200,000. The district should realize the savings just by those rates. Just in closing, the general fund had an unassigned fund balance at the end of the year of $114,000. That's down $239,000 from the prior year, and that's 0.69% of the subsequent year's budget. Of course, your limit is 4%, so you do have a lot of room there. That if you outperform your budget, you can build up that unassigned fund balance, which obviously should be the first goal to get yourself a little cushion in that unassigned fund balance. Your appropriated fund balance is $600,000. I mentioned that exceeds your unassigned fund balance, but it's more because of the fact that your unassigned fund balance is so low. But it is sort of a dangerous thing to be in, because if your budget works to the penny and you use up that entire $600,000, you don't have another $600,000 to appropriate that next year. And with the tax cap, it puts you in a tough spot. And the reserves decreased by $461,000. That was $333,000 that came out of your tax cert reserve that has to go back to your general fund after 4 years. You also spent $128,000 out of your workers' comp reserve, and there's another $126,000 that are going to be spent in 2016. So over the last 2 years, the reserves have been decreased by $1 million. The district still has some healthy reserves that they can use, but it is something you have to look at really together. You're looking at your unassigned fund balance, your reserve fund balance. You don't want them all to go down at the same time, because the reserves are sort of your fallback, that if you have a tough year, you can pay a bill using a reserve rather than using your unassigned fund balance. You have that option to do that.
How do we know what our workers' comp reserve will be in 2016? Like, isn't that claims against workers' comp?
No, this is the reserve the district has set aside. This is not what you're gonna get billed. This is what you have set aside, an amount that is gonna help you pay those workers' comp
So
expenses.
this is the amount we're setting aside.
And there was already a budget resolution, board resolution saying you're gonna use 125,000 of the reserve. What that means is if your bill comes into workers' comp at, say, 130, you're gonna use 125 in the reserve, you're only using 5,000 of your unassigned fund balance.
Okay, I
And
understand.
that's how you relieve the pressure on your unassigned fund balance when you have reserves set up like that. You can offset costs by using your reserves. I mentioned the school lunch fund, the operating deficit was actually $22,000. $49,000 over the past 3 years have been the cumulative operating deficits, and the deficit fund balance of $42,000. So that's something really should be looking forward to addressing that, turning around that operating deficit. Capital projects fund this year had no activity, there's no current activity in the capital projects fund. Your federal single audit, which you did have this year, because you had the $600,000 expenses, that's a separate audit, it's internal controls and compliance over specific major federal programs. In the audit report on page 64, it lists which programs we decided were major this year based on size of the program, risk assessments, things like that. The current year findings, we had a discussion about format of certified payrolls. That's actually the one comment that's in the management letter. It really was a format issue, and so it didn't rise to the level of what we call a significant deficiency or material weakness, so it's not a federal finding. It doesn't go in the federal report. So you do get an unmodified opinion on the federal programs, which is a clean report. The management letter, the one written comment had to do with the format of the certified payroll. That has to do with the people certified that their pay is being charged to a federal program. And you had the certified payrolls, but just not in the right formats. Sometimes you have to do them twice a year, sometimes you have to do monthly. You just got to make sure you get them when you need to get all of the certified payrolls. So the financial statement's got an unmodified opinion. The entire financial statement's got a clean opinion, meaning everything is in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And quickly, upcoming for June 30th of 2018, another new GASB 75. Again, this is similar to some of the recent ones where you're seeing a lot of these large liabilities going into the financial statements. This has to do with the existing GASB 45 for retiree health insurance. That's that big liability in your financials. Right now, it's being amortized into your financial statements over 30 years. So it goes in little by little rather than just throwing it right in. What GASB 75 is going to do is just throw it all right in. So they're going to put that in your financials. So just as an example, if it was in the current year, the liability would be $24 million instead of $9 million. So that other $15 million is being amortized little by little. Now they're saying, you know something, we're not going to do that anymore. Just put the whole thing in there. What this means is in a couple of years, you're going to have this big liability for retirees' health insurance, this big pension or liability, asset or liability for your pension numbers. There's going to be a lot of big numbers in that financial statement in the front, the statement of net position, which is your full accrual statement. With all those numbers, just realize that a lot of those are assumptions and estimates based on, I always say they're guesses, very educated guesses. The actuaries use a lot of stuff they go through in making these, but they can change dramatically those numbers. And again, this is just your full accrual statements. The real ones that you're concerned with are the governmental funds, the general fund and your fund balances and stuff like that. This doesn't affect this, but you should be aware of it. Obviously, people look at your financials, ask you questions about these numbers. You should at least have an idea of why all of a sudden these big numbers are showing up in your financial statements. And again, as it gets closer, if anything changes, anything new we learn about that, we'll update you as it gets closer to the June 30th, 18 implementation year. So, overall, I think the district really, with its fund balance, has sort of been doing what they wanted to do in terms of bringing the fund balance down from years ago when you had all that money in there for the repair reserve, bring it down. I would just say, just keep an eye on the unassigned fund balance, using your reserves to sort of offset some expenses, but, try to build it up if at all possible before your reserves get depleted. That still could be a few years down the line, and we don't know what's going to happen, but that really should be what should be looking at, is that unassigned fund balance going forward. So anybody has any questions on the report or anything spoke about here tonight?
What's the reason for GASB 75? Is there some advantage to?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure what the advantage any of these are. I think what a lot of these things really, ideally, when 10 years ago when GASB 34 case first came in, if you remember, that's when you put your fixed assets in your report, and now you have depreciation. They were trying to make government financial statements look more like private financial, like an IBM. They wanted it to be comparable. So they wanted you to have fixed assets, a depreciation, a long-term debt. But in all reality, governments are not the same as private businesses. They're really not. I've been doing now since GASB 34 came in 10 years ago. I don't think I've ever had any board ask me or care about those full accrual statements in the front. What do you care what depreciation is on the building? You don't care. You care what your debt service payments are. That's what you care about. You're not concerned with what depreciation. That's a tax item. But, so then they put in GASB 68 this year, where they put the pension asset liability, and then they figured, well, since we're not amortizing those numbers in, let's go back and fix GASB 45 and not amortize those. That's really what GASB 75 is to make it more comparable to GASB 68. You don't want to have one that's going all odds and the other one that's being amortized there little by little. So they're just going to throw the number. In a way, it's probably a good idea. Just throw all the numbers in there. You can see them all, and you can, look at them and decide how meaningful those numbers are to you. And certainly the pension ones, you have really no control over the pension ones. That's all up to TRS and ERS. You don't have any control over the rates. You really have no control over any of that. Your employees are going to be in the ERS and TRS system. There's something you can do about that. So that's a number you really have to look at, and it is what it is.
This question is more for the board and Mr. DeFord. There are two, sounds like, action items here for us, which is related to the school budget. There's going to be some structural changes that have to be made, right? So the recommendation is to either increase transfers from the general fund, increase prices, or cut expenses. And for the school lunch, yeah. For the general fund balance, I remember from the state comptroller's report, the suggestion was that because of the way that we've been using our fund balance, which was planned and purposeful, but at some point you see this is decreasing to the point where it has to stabilize. The recommendations were to either increase the tax levy or cut expenses, neither of which are easy and actually significantly challenging. So because this is the first time I'll be going through the budget process, the question is, at what point do we begin discussing strategies to solve both of those action items?
Usually what we do, Brian, is Ruth and I start preparing the budget. And as we bring it to the table, we discuss it line by line. So that's where these discussions will start coming into play. A couple of decisions that the board needs to make up front is whether we are going to use the allowable levy limit. And that's usually the first thing we'll come to the board with, and that'll usually be in December so that we can start our budget planning. Because the allowable levy limit can be over 2% because of the various exclusions. So as Andrew said, if it's 0.5, our allowable levy limit could be 1.9 to 2.1. The board first needs to decide, are we going to use the entire allowable levy limit? Because that lets Ruth and I know how much money we have to start working with. Then we start putting together a budget based on last year's budget. We have a lot of unknowns that are coming up this year. We're going into new negotiations for a new teacher contract. So we would need to set aside what we think any increase may be and plan that into the budget. So we'll start having these discussions in general at the December meeting when we start laying out the budget calendar, and that budget calendar that you'll approve at the December meeting will lay out the course of the discussion. If this past year was any indicator of the current year, we will not know what our revenue figures are until April. I see no reason why the governor is not going to play with the money again. I see no reason why he is going to do anything different than he did this past year, which was not release the aid runs when he released the executive budget. So for planning purposes, we go on this year's aid, adding on to that the levy limit the board decides they wish to go for, and we plan our expenses accordingly. We had a very long discussion on the school lunch fund in August of last year. We looked to raise the lunch prices to start offsetting them. The problem with that conversation is that hurts those in need the most. Those using or accessing our school lunch program are usually the ones who really need it. So any little shift in that is an extra burden on those parents. And though we had approved an increase, it was rescinded when we found out that we were out of line with everyone else in the county. And the decision at that time was made to supplement the school lunch fund from the general fund. And I think for some reason, I had the figure of $70,000 that was set aside. Your report is actually showing we used less than that.
What was 80, but I'm just.
70 or 80 is the number
I'm trying to
that-
remember off the top of my head.
So that was, we've already had that discussion, but again, we have that discussion again, because if you're going to increase lunch prices, you must increase those prices for the subsequent year. You don't, it's not good practice to do it in the middle of the year.
Yep.
So that decision would have to be made by the board up front. But then again, that supplemental figure of $70,000 or $80,000 in the overall budget is very insignificant. So it is addressed, but we'll set the budget calendar in December at the same time we look at the levy limit.
Right now, and so that's for an annual budget, but I guess my overall question is that there's probably a structural change that might have to happen. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems that we've, for years now, purposely, again, by design, pulled money, a significant amount of money from the reserve fund to offset the difference between planned expenditures and tax revenues. So we're going in that direction. It's been working out really well because the fund balance has been there. But at some point, not next year's budget, but at some point down the road, we're going to have to consider whether to cut expenses or increase taxes above the tax cap. And so that's something, we're going to have to do one of those two things.
Absolutely.
So I guess my question was more about long-term strategy. We're not going to discuss it during an annual budget process, but do we need to begin the discussions about what 4, 5, 6 years down the road looks like and what the plan is?
We've had that discussion before, but it's hard to look 4, 5, 6 years down the road when you have no idea what state aid is going to look like. They've been pushing New York State to work on a 5-year budget plan or a 3-year budget plan for years. They won't do it. If they did it, every municipality and school district in the state could make long-range plans. I've had a couple of our unions ask me for those projections. I don't have a crystal ball because they're not giving us the information we need. The decision the board is going to have to make is, and this is with the help of our auditors, there's going to come a point where we need to keep minimal reserves in those accounts. When the auditors say, you're getting close and next year you're going to have to make those decisions, then that's where the board is going to have to decide, are we going to cut expenses? Which means we're going to cut program, because Andrew showed you the numbers, we're at bare bones right now. I'm running within 1% of our budget projection, which is pretty good.
Right.
So it means we're either going to cut program, because we're going to have to reduce staff, or we're going to have to exceed the levy limit. And we always knew this was a discussion that was being kicked down the road. The circuit breaker is going to be our auditors saying, and I've been asking the question for years, what the statutory recommended minimum in those accounts are, and even from OCS, I couldn't get that response. Okay, the controller's office wouldn't say, well, it's recommended you keep this in workers' comp, and you keep this and that, because nobody wants to dictate, but they'll tell you if you're overfunded, and they'll tell you if you're spending too much. But I would say by my projections, at the rate we're going, that conversation is 2 to 3 years down the road, if there are no significant revenue increases. So that's, as far as a projection, it's pretty much the best I can do. And I guess at the rate we're doing it, you would concur with that.
Yeah, I would. Really, if you want to look at something like a real sort of a benchmark or something that's quick to look at it, there's so many moving parts, obviously, in the school district budget, unknowns and things that might happen, but is that appropriated fund balance? If you look at that one chart where it showed where the year you appropriated a lot of fund balance, then you appropriated a little less, that's what you're looking to do. Like for this year's budget, you appropriated $600,000. If you can appropriate less than 600 in the next budget, you're heading in the right direction. That's just the benchmark. Look, we're appropriating next year 500,000, say, and the budget comes in just as close as it is, then you've saved 100. But no, that's what you're looking at. But really, it's exactly what you're saying. To get to 500,000, you either have to cut expenses or raise revenues. That's the only way you're going to get the appropriated fund balance to be less. But that's really the goal. Is the only way to slow that trend down is to reduce how much you're appropriating each year to try to get it to stop leveling out. But again, it's really, there's no easy answer at this point. And I think all municipalities are going through the same thing. Some of the districts I do don't have the reserves this district has, and they're in a lot worse shape because they have nothing to fall back on now with these real low. And I have districts that have less than a 1% fund balance and virtually no reserves. They really have nowhere to go. You at least can offset some of your expenses with your reserves. But over the next couple of years, and things may change over the next couple of years. We don't know. There may come a lot of pressure on this 2% tax cap as it gets down to 0.73, 0.5%. I mean, people are already saying, people who believe in the tax cap are saying at 0.5%. I mean, you have fuel costs go up, health insurance costs go up. I mean, it's very difficult to say we're not going to raise our budget more than less than half a percentage point from year to year. So whether there's gonna be a lot of pressure on this, we don't know what's gonna happen with that. So that could change, and that would change, obviously, everybody's thinking. But right now, it's a tough time to do what districts really need to do. There's just nothing there in terms of additional revenues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you.
Andy.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you. Okay, the next thing on our agenda is going to be Mr. Krebs and the comprehensive counseling.
You want me to go before
Yes.
Mrs. Jenny?
I do.
Okay.
Mrs. Jenny's a field trip.
Okay, I'll go before that. All right. So I'm supposed to go over a comprehensive counseling plan, which I provided copy to all of our board members. As another unfunded mandate from the state, this past year, we have to provide to our district residents a school comprehensive counseling plan, and I provided that to you. And what this is this is an overview of our K-12 counseling program that has been put up. And in a couple of really very simple things, I kind of highlighted some things about it. If you open up the first page, on the back of the first page, these are the people that kind of organized the plan with us. It was Mrs. Wayman, Mrs. McKay, Mrs. Gower, Mrs. Guerin, Dr. Lemmy, Mrs. Gordon, myself, and Mrs. Keegan. So we kind of sat down, we took this template came from a number of different districts. One was Shenendehowa that had a similar template to this, and we inserted some of our plan into the template. On the overall theme of why is because our traditional guidance counselors or our traditional guidance functions within a school district are changing. And the type of things that are happening in schools with counseling programs and the programs that are being set up for the district are changing. And because of that, it's shifted from a focus of counseling from a student-by-student system to a comprehensive and developmental program providing academic, career, personal, social development for every K through 12 student. So with that, we had to kind of come up with the things that were really important in Eldred, the years in which they would take place, and that is consistent with this counseling plan. So if you kind of just jot back a couple of pages into the plan, you will see the delivery system, which has charts that are set up like this, that pretty much suggest the type of things that happen all the way from kindergarten as you flip through all the way to 12th grade. And those are the type of things that we felt should be occurring in Eldred with students as they move through the counseling program. Not all of the things that we saw happening in Shenendehowa or Guilderland or some, I think Skaneateles was one out in western New York that they had a program fit with things that we had here. But many of the plans that we put in place here for lesson content and the things that kids would be doing, we thought it was really a worthwhile thing for our students here at Eldred. The nice thing about this is this is a yearly plan, so it's always changing. So if something works or doesn't work, we can start to fit it in, change it by grade level, see what things the teachers might be doing in each of the grades, see what type of curriculum they're teaching. A lot of these things fall within different curriculum areas that we teach within school. Some happen in health classes, some happen in PE classes, some happen in a regular classroom with listening skills, whatever type of skills or the skill sets that kids would need, those things are happening within the classroom. There's a lot of things that have come up here that we're really not quite sure how they will fit in until we kind of work through the plan this year and see if each of those levels and each of those things should occur during the plan. And what we've decided is that we have a mid-year review of where we are and then an end-of-the-year review of where we are and come back to you at the end of the year and let you know how our counseling plan went throughout the year. So you'll be hearing from me probably in February again, if we review in January of how things went, and then at the end of the year, we'll make recommendations for the plan if we need to have any changes that go on. There's a lot of things in here, and I know that because we started this year with our counselors at the high school to look at developing what type of things should happen during the, and we made like a tickler file of here's what we want to do in September, here's what we're going to do in October. So we started putting these things together to try to manage them so that we have some timelines and time frames to work with kids and work with teachers and work through some of our programs that we want to have. I know this has been a big topic of conversation here at the board about what type of things we want to look at for drug and alcohol awareness. And so these are the type of things that if we have some programs or have some ideas that we want to kind of massage into a plan like this so we know which grades we want to target, what time of the year we'd like to put these plans in, and the type of programs, whether they worked or didn't work, and then take them in or out as the years go on. So there's a lot of things here. It took us a long time to kind of go through this. This was a 3-day process of just sitting down and going through each of those items. And Leah Martucci, who's our part-time secretary in the office, typed this all up, put it all out, and this is our final product for you. So I know I kind of went over a whole bunch of things for all of you, and if you have any questions, this is kind of where we were. It's similar to what other districts are putting out, and as soon as we go through the reading, I think this would be placed on our district website so people could also view.
It's very comprehensive.
It was, yes. Does anybody have any questions? I might not be able to answer anything, but and everything, but or if you had something to bring back, I could get you an answer next time, or you want to look it over and have some questions, you're welcome to email.
I'm looking at a school counseling curriculum. It talks about school counselors presenting lessons in the classroom.
Yes.
Is this going to be hard to incorporate?
No, we're attempting to look at doing some of those things, and some of our school counselors actually go into classrooms now and present some of the things that go on. We have a couple of programs where they go to the 10th graders and present an overview of what functions that the career and tech offer for the 10th graders going into 11th grade. Some of the other things that they're presenting, we've talked about drug and alcohol awareness, small group type of things. Presenting to the 7th grade group about our mentoring program, which is taking place next week. So some of those things are already happening.
System support, it talks about school counselors regularly collect and analyze data. What kind of data?
They look at everything, report card grades, anything that pretty much goes through RTI. They look at things that, they look at grades, attendance, RTI information. They're gathering stuff from other schools. They have a school counselors group that they are trying to really function.
So some of that's also being done.
Yes.
All right.
Mr. Krebs, do we have a K-12 comprehensive school counseling plan in place for 2014, 2015? This is something we do every year. So this is a new state mandate.
This was based on what we kind of had in our tickler file before, and we put it into a plan which was required by the state
And we were required to file this with the state at some point.
this year.
We're required to adopt,
Adopt.
which means somebody at some point is going to want to see.
Okay, I got you.
Okay, there's somebody in a cubicle that has previously been unoccupied, whose job it will be to collect and count and make sure they get 690 counseling plans.
Okay, I got it.
They could be the same counseling plan for all 690 districts,
Yeah.
but they need 690.
All right, so I have some questions. I actually spent a lot of time reading this, and first of all, I can see that it's a tremendous amount of work, and it's really well done. I mean, it's really spelled out in extreme detail, and it's really good stuff. My concern I have is, and you kind of confirmed it when you opened this up by saying, here's another state mandate, is that I'm worried when the state kind of, tries to impose something that may or may not be good for our teachers and counselors and students. And so, just for my colleagues here, I just want to read something from the first page under transformation of school counseling, and make sure that I'm not reading this the wrong way and that I'm not overly concerned about it. But it says, why do school counseling programs need transformation? Right? As education changes and the expectations related to the Common Core standards become greater, the demands on both students and educators also increase. The role of school counseling is evolving to address these changes. Now, counselors can focus on the goal of improving student achievement. By focusing on student achievement, school counselors will become vital educators in the elementary school setting. So my concern is that if there's one place in a school that should be sort of sacred and completely detached from overall academic achievement. It's in the area of school counseling. I mean, the kids that utilize school counseling services have needs that in many times have nothing to do with specifically with their academic performance. They may be emotional issues or home life issues, maybe drug issues, bullying, self-awareness, whatever it might be. And those issues are really important, particularly for kids that don't have any support system outside of our safety net and our school. So my concern is if the goal here is in some way to tie either the counselor's evaluation to the overall school's academic performance, or even evaluate the success of the program on the academic achievement of the kids that utilize that program, then I think we're going in a really dangerous direction, because it's going to interfere with what I think is a sacred responsibility to take care of those kids' needs, which may have nothing to do with academics, if that makes sense.
Can I answer? The guiding principle of counseling work in a school has always been to support a child's academic progress. In other words, we also refer children to counseling outside of school. We work with everybody and anybody that we need to help a child deal with whatever is in his or her life. But our focus in the school is how what's in that child's life is affecting that child's school performance. So we have to have a framework around which because we could never meet the needs of every child's counseling and issues in a school district. We just can't do that. But we can help them be support. We can support them in a school setting to deal with the larger issues of their life.
Right.
And so that's not different. That's not new, what you just read. That has, in all my years in education, that has had to be the limitation. And most people want more than that for their child, or many teachers want much more than that for the children in their classroom.
Right.
But it has never been the role of school to be the counselor or the family counselor or the true mental health professional overall for a child. We've always worked with what's available in our communities.
No, I understand.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying. My concern, I think, is that we're transitioning now from an individual student-based approach to an overall all-encompassing student body approach. And I think the problem in that case is if you're going to be looking at academic achievement, you're looking at it on a student body level. And so the problem then is it could potentially interfere with the direct needs of an individual student, right? So I just don't, and I don't think it would be a problem in Eldred, because like Mr. DeFore said, this thing's going to be filed and it has to be done.
Well,
and I
we're
think that
gonna
our
do
people
it.
are professional enough to do this the right way, but I'm afraid to see it written in black and white like that, because I feel like somebody might get the impression that that's what the state is imposing upon us, and that's the expectation that we have for them.
The students' emotional and mental health are intrinsic in their success in school. The research has based that out for many, many years. The plan is just a guidance document, a roadmap, if you will. If your concern is that once this is adopted, we will be going back and meeting with the counselors and saying this is what you need to be doing in September and October, that's nonsense. And I don't think it goes into that detail, okay? But it's a roadmap, okay? It's basically trying to get us to put on paper what we've been doing all along.
That's what I was going to say. A lot of this is things we do
No
already.
child in Eldred within our ability has ever gone in need when it comes to counseling services. We've been fortunate this year to have an individual join our staff from BOCES under a 2-year grant as a full-time counselor down at the elementary school, who is working hand in hand with teachers in the classroom. She came on the scene after the plan was drafted, so her name isn't even included in the plan at this time. I'm now figuring out how I can work her into the budget 2 years down the road, because we're so impressed with the work she's done in such a short period of time. So it's, Brian, it's like many documents that we have on file that we're required to have on file. As Scott said, it is a template, and just like our APPR is a template, because if they weren't, I would estimate that that's about 80 pages long that you're looking at.
Yeah, no, about
If
40 or 40.
If they did not use a template,
Yeah.
they would have had to write the
Right.
entire
Yeah.
40 pages themselves, just like if I didn't use the APPR template, I'd be writing 80 pages
Yeah.
myself. So there might be verbiage in there that's, for all intents and purposes, canned, which as the Governor's Commission or the Commissioner's Commission evolves, could be completely irrelevant 6 months down the road. But as far as any concern you may have, that our counselors will be doing what they've been doing all along. This was an opportunity for them to sit down as a group and set to paper what they do and take a much broader look at how it fits together, so they're not operating in a capsule.
Yeah.
So when they're saying looking at the overall student body, if Paul has a problem, it could be a bigger problem in the school.
Okay.
And if there's a bigger problem in the school, it could be affecting Paul.
I thought that I might have been reading too much into this. I just want to make sure that it sounds like if this is the case, that the success of the counselor's activities dealing individually with students isn't going to be evaluated on the basis of some compiled test score. Okay. And thank you.
So sometimes our greatest success is with the students that perform the course. And that is getting them through high school and getting them into a career where they can make a good living and have a family. And they don't necessarily have to be our A and B students. So success is merited on each child and getting them to their ability level, and that entails dealing with their mental, emotional, and physical well-being.
Finally, the second half of the document where you're spelling out in really great detail all of the things that the counselors do, I'm glad to see this will be posted on the website because people, I think, probably underappreciate the amount of effort. I mean, it's really a lot of stuff. But there's a couple of things on here, and I just want to make sure that I'm again, not reading this wrong, but there are a lot of things that the counselors are doing that are spelled out now in their evaluation process. How are they going to be evaluated for success on the basis of testing? And I just want to make sure that testing is testing that is established by our school and our counselors, not by some...
What do you mean that they're evaluated?
So in other words, for example, in second grade, one of the counseling areas is personal safety. And under the evaluation methods on how the results will be measured, I assume that means the results of that counseling process. The evaluation method is a pre and post test.
Okay. That's a scientific methodology. It's not used to evaluate the individual as much as it's used to evaluate the approach. So are we teaching safety?
Gotcha.
Okay, so it's not like they're going to go in and give a pre and a post test and walk out and it goes into their performance review. It's were we successful in delivering that? And that pre and post test could be observation before, observation after.
Okay.
Okay, so if you're reading into it that individual's going to be evaluating on that, that's incorrect.
Okay.
Our counselors are excluded from the APPR. They get what we call a clinical evaluation.
Okay.
The building administrators who work with them on a daily basis evaluate them on an ongoing process throughout the school year.
Okay.
There's no testing, there's no scores, none of that goes into it. It goes into their overall effectiveness in dealing with the needs of our kids.
And then finally, this is not criticism by any means, at least from the school's perspective, but in third grade, there's now a guidance lesson content called test anxiety. And it's a shame that we have to have that. Again, this not you, Mr. Krebs, or you, Mr. DeFore, we've had this conversation a number of times. We've now created a clinical problem with testing that requires counseling for students, and it's just shameful. And this is just funny, but ironic, that the evaluation method to determine whether we've successfully counseled test anxiety is a test. And I understand now what that's, but it's just a pet peeve, and it's disgusting that we now have to counsel students because we've imposed testing to this extent that they're actually anxious and upset.
From my special ed background, there's a lot more to it than what you're looking at. Test anxiety before mandated state assessments has always been a part of a child's maturing.
Right, but at what level though? I mean,
no, I'm just saying,
It depends on the child.
the test anxiety issue has always been a counseling issue, and it's not solely and exclusively related to a state assessment. It's a routine quiz in a class. It's a unit test that a teacher has always given in a classroom, and a child's ability to cope with that, because a lot of children can articulate the answers, but when you put a piece of paper in front of them, they cannot put it down on paper. So that's test anxiety of a broader context,
Yep.
not just a state assessment. It existed long before NCLB.
Yeah, then there was.
And it's something as counselors they've been dealing with forever, because not, my younger brother, okay, never took a state assessment in his life. You put any type of a test in front of him, he freaked out. And that's what the guidance counselors work with him on. You know, well, your teacher kind of needs to know where you stand on this, John, so what are you going to do? But it's not just that focus, it's been something counseling has been dealing with going on. It's probably not appropriate that it's put in at 3rd grade when they get their first state assessment, but it is a counseling issue.
All right, I got you. Thank you, and I really do appreciate the amount of effort and everything the counselors do, because I had no idea until I read that document. So, thank you.
Any other questions? Everybody good? Yeah, let's go.
Okay, so part of what we're going to be doing during the course of the year is looking at some of the things that we're doing in both of our buildings. Since we're meeting down at McKenzie until the month of December, we're going to start looking at some of the things our teachers are doing here. 2 weeks ago, we had a very successful 20th anniversary celebration of McKenzie being an educational institution, and part of that was the dedication of our new pre-K rooms and our new pre-K playground. Well, had this been September, we could have shown you the pre-K playground, but since it's October and it's getting dark, that's not going to happen. But what I want to do is I've asked Mrs. Jenny and Miss Robertson, where's Miss Robertson? And Miss Navoa and Mrs. Tussaud, we're going to go on a field trip down to the 2 new pre-K rooms, and they're going to give you a quick overview of what they do with our little ones. So with that,
We're gonna go to my room first.
Yes.
Right?
okay,
Great.
so if you would all join us and follow Mrs. Jenny and Miss Robertson down the hall, and they will provide you directions.
Yes, thank you. Yes,
And then we'll turn it back. Okay?
Yes. That is true.
Yeah, well, everybody, I'm gonna put the packers on that.
Yeah, that's the pre-K. Oh. They were logged in.
Just stay away from everybody. My other hand is in and I
A whole lot less.
snowplow. What you work on the high school. It's kind of like,
All right, well, you're happy.
you can't deny it.
No, I haven't done it.
Can't deny it. What was our favorite 2 years ago? We had 6 inches on Halloween. I was at a retreat for my doctoral program, I was supposed to do a conference.
As well.
And by the time we started on Sunday morning, we had 3 inches of snow. We were all out, so we finally turned around.
Go around the city.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You know, because it won't be.
Your lunch is in my car, because we ordered lunch. So as we walked down, we reached to the crowd, we took our sandwiches.
He's got one, but he can't help you much. We're trying to decide whether we should bring the day. Yes.
Okay, our next thing on our agenda is Mr. Krebs and his secondary principal report.
Okay, so I have 2 students from the junior, senior high school, Griffin and Kat, and they're gonna go over a couple of things, and whenever they leave out, I'll fill in, okay? All right.
So we recently had our student council elections at the high school, so myself and Kat and Sammy are here representing student council. So we had our first reorganization meeting on October 6th, where we got all of our students that were elected and the officers, and then we went from there to elect the officers. So I just want to say that I want to read off the names of the winners. So in 9th grade we have Brianna Terry, Patrick Kinney, and Hannah Meyer. In 10th grade, we have Sandra Weatherly, Julia Foster, and Joseph Potter. In 11th grade, we have Helen Sherwood, Samantha LaPut, and Catherine Nicholson. 12th grade, we have Julia Curley, Melissa McMonigal, and myself. For officers is Sammy. Treasurer is Kat. For Vice President Helen Sherwood, she was sick, she was going to be here. And then for President is myself. We started off our meeting taking an oath of office. And then we went and I gave a presentation to Student Council because a couple of years back I found it, so I wrote up a presentation of what we were looking at changing, what direction we're going into, that sort of stuff. We took our yearbook photos, worked with some cosmetic stuff, the seating in the room, should we do the pledge in the beginning, small stuff like that. We established that our meetings will be on the second and fourth Thursday of the month. That'll be after school in Ms. Stringer's room, which is, 2:30 something. Anyone is welcome to attend. It's entertaining. And then today was our first official meeting after the reorganization. So we got a presentation from Ms. Zub, who is our treasurer for the clubs. She told us about how we should properly fill out paperwork for funding, fiscal responsibility, all sorts of great stuff. We talked about our minutes. Our minutes are going to be posted hopefully on the school website or elsewhere. They are really well written and everything's recorded very accurately. We talked with Mr. DeFore a little bit. I haven't got a chance to talk to Mr. Krebs. We were talking about maybe take the executive council, which is the officers, might take a trip to another school to view how they function, the school spirit stuff. We are going to possibly go to one of their student council meetings, collaborate and share some ideas. We discussed the new SAD program, which is Students Against Destructive Decisions. They were looking for help from upperclassmen and high schoolers. It's been brought back, and there's actually quite a lot of membership, and a lot of people are involved, which is great. We talked about doing a 7th and 8th grade presentation for the apprenticeship program, which we voted on today. We had it in our constitution, which governs the council. We never actually put it into place. This would be for 7th and 8th graders to work with an individual in student council so they can learn. They would follow us to board meetings, they would follow us to committee meetings, and all sorts of stuff. And then, other than that, we have the trunk or treat we're going to be involved in, and we are going to discuss the dress code possibly next week after school with some of the staff and faculty members. We wanted to talk with the teachers so we're all on the same page before we present it officially to the board. So that's all I have.
Okay, I have the events that are going to be occurring at the high school in the next month. So next week, Student Council has organized the Spirit Week, and so we have like the 7 days of events. 5, if I'm wrong. Okay. And in our meeting today, we discussed getting teachers as judges. We have 2 currently. We need to get 4 more.
That would be like for the pep rally. Then.
Yeah, that's the pep rally, which is on Thursday during 3rd or 4th period. And we also discussed the music that has to happen during the pep rally. So we have to get all the songs that are needed for the different grades. And we have to pick which songs the band is going to play. That's it. So then the bonfire is on the 22nd, and we're not sure if there's going to be a homecoming football game. That would be on the Friday after the bonfire. And then the homecoming dance is on the 24th. And the only event after that is the fall play, which is for the elementary students, which is on the 6th and 7th. Which I'm assuming is in the high school, but I'm not positive. Okay, that's it.
Okay. Is there any questions from anyone? From the board or from the public?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Jeff.
Okay, I wanted to share a couple other things with you. Tomorrow, Mrs. Oset and our 7th and 8th grade team had put together a field trip for all of our 7th and 8th grade. We'll be going to Hyde Park to visit FDR's home and library. So they will be going there tomorrow for the day. Next week, we had discussed about having a 7th grade mentoring program, and that will be our first trip. We're going to Lake Champion Young Life is hosting us for our 7th grade mentoring, and all of our 7th graders were hooked up with one of the students on our honor society. So they're going on Monday for the mentoring program. In November, we have a couple of activities that are happening in November. The 4th and 5th, we're having our ASVAB testing. Typically, a lot of students use that for going into one of the services, but the ASVAB test provides a lot more information to kids other than just providing it to the services. So some students, even though they did not wish to do that, can still take the test. And on November 6th, all of our juniors will be attending College Day at Sullivan County Community College, and that's like a morning trip. So those are some of the activities. I wanted to also recognize a couple of students from our musical programs. Over the summer, we had 3 students that were selected to the Hudson Valley Honors Program at Monroe Woodbury High School. They were participating in a 5-week music program from September to October, culminating in 2 separate concerts. Julia Curley was selected to the wind ensemble. Audrey Milan was selected as a clarinetist, and Hannah Mayer were also selected to the symphonic band. So those 3 were participating in the activities at Monroe Woodbury High School. Chris Weber has been selected as an area all-state band member, taking place in November, and both Julia Curley and Kim Davis were chosen to perform at the area all-state mixed chorus. So those are our participants in the music program. So congratulations to them. Briefly in sports, sports season is coming to a close for the fall. Our girls cross-country team won their league championship. They are ready to participate at Bear Mountain for the Section 9 championship. Our boys soccer team clinched a berth in the sectional tournament, and our girls soccer team won the league championship and will play for the Section 9 championship on October 27th in Middletown. So that's one that we have currently on the agenda. Our JV and modified soccer teams had a very successful season so far. They're still continuing. Our football team is trying to make it to the end of the season. We had a small setback by not being able to field a minimum number of players for our game against Millbrook this week, so they had to forfeit the game. So that's why there's a question mark going forward. They were going to have conversations with that. We started off the year questionable with our numbers, and a couple of injuries and a couple of other things along the way did not allow us to field a team. So that's the concern with our football program. Upcoming, we have a couple of things that have taken place. We brought our 9th graders to the YAP program at Sullivan Correctional Facility, took 2 groups there. I don't see anybody here who went to the trip now. We have upcoming for our 11th and 12th graders a distracted drivers program offered through the Sullivan County, who's offering that? District Attorney's Office. They're coming in November. We also have, we looked through a number of different programs. Sullivan County Human Rights Commission is going to be coming in February and presenting a program to our 9th and 10th graders called Celebrating Difference. And that's their part of the Human Rights Coalition that we participate with the Sullivan County Cares Coalition. So we got that information from them. We're continuing with our PBIS groups with honor roll celebrations that are coming up. We have a community event possibly in February and March. The Yankee Doodle Circus would be a community event. We have a number of other things that are going on, and I'll come back to you each month and let you know what we have planned for each of those events and activities. And I just wanted to briefly, I had mentioned last month about the AP exams and how we wish to kind of incorporate them and get them up and running for next year. We have our music theory one. And I just wanted to kind of address one thing. I saw an article from October 14th, which was yesterday, that was published that talked about SAT and AP scores in the city of New York. And they kind of set those in place and came up with some numbers of the city's average. And the city's average for their SAT scores, and that's the math, the reading, and the writing together, they had average SAT scores of 1349. So I kind of was curious about what that really meant. So in a portion of the article, they continue to say the College Board, who is the company that owns the SAT, so all the students that take the SAT, owned by College Board, defines college readiness, and we keep hearing that term college readiness, that students should be college ready, should show a score of 1550 on all three of their sections combined, and says that students who earn that score have a 65% chance of achieving at least a B average during their first year of college. So that's kind of what they set as a benchmark. The city, as I said, had a benchmark of 1349. They also talked about in New York City that approximately 20% of their juniors and seniors take an AP exam. So that kind of set in place about the numbers of where those are going. So last year we had students in Eldred who took the SAT score, and our SAT average in Eldred amongst the students that were taking it was 1472. So better than the New York City average for most of their kids that were taking it. If their average was 13 and change, ours was 14, we're still not at that college and career readiness. But however, that kind of showed me if 20% of their students who are taking the SAT score are taking an AP class, maybe we should be in line with those type of things, and I had addressed that about suggesting we have more AP courses in the school. So I just wanted to kind of let you know, I'll come back to you with our SAT scores this past week. A number of our juniors took the PSAT scores. We're offering the PSAT to all of our 10th graders in the spring. And going forward, again, those are one of the things that our counselors work with the kids on, you know, how to set it up. Mom and dad can set up the SAT and they do it online, and they have to come in. We'll be offering those hopefully in the next year or so in-house. So I just wanted to let you know about how that was going. And that's my report for the board this evening. Any questions?
Mr. Krebs,
Yes.
you said there's a number of factors that led to us having to forfeit this week's football game. Is that unprecedented that we forfeit a football game?
No. We had to forfeit football games last year also.
As a result of the...
There was other issues, yeah.
So why don't we have enough players?
We started off the season with pretty much the minimum number of players. We had a couple of concerns with eligibility, and we also had a couple of concerns with injury, which resulted in the number going down. We actually have 2 students that apparently are going on vacation also. So there was injury, eligibility, and vacation.
The eligibility is academic achievement?
Yes.
How many kids were not eligible based on academic performance?
I can't be specific. Mr. Gass did not give me that number. And I don't know if they played into the number of the reason why they could not field the team.
Is it unusual to not be able to field a football team based on academic performance?
It's not unheard of.
In Eldred?
Our numbers have been dwindling. When we used to have 30 kids in the team, it was never an issue. But we need to have 16 kids in the team to field the team. When you've only got 20, your margin for error is very slim.
So it's not that there's a greater number of kids who are not performing academically, but there's a smaller number of kids?
There's a smaller number of kids we're working with in the pool. And between injuries, Mr. Gass came in Monday and said when the 5-week reports came out, based on the injuries and everything else, they were not going to have enough to field the team.
Do you know how many kids were?
No, I do not. So it has more to do with the smaller number. If you remember back in August, it was even iffy whether we were going to have a team or not. So we were always at that.
Yeah, but it's unfortunate.
Last year, we almost had a similar problem because there was a number of injuries in the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
But we were able to stay eligible for most of the season.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, our business office report, Ms. Lewis?
Well, we are in full swing at school on processing AP invoices, getting all bills paid in time and fashion, monitoring the budget, of course. I have discussed with Mr. DeFord that I do believe the business office could really use some support staff to relieve me from some of those daily tasks and allow me to focus more on the important things like grant reporting and seeking reimbursement, looking at ways to cut costs for budget development, working with DCM or BOCES on some of the cooperative purchasing opportunities and training faculty and staff and getting involved with that. Watching our procurement, that we're following our procedures so that we are getting the best price. I mean, I know we normally buy state contracts, but I will tell you, state contract historically is a starting point. It is not the best price. And it does take a lot of time to get quotes and comparison shop. And I just really feel my time would be better spent on that reporting and monitoring, and support staff would support me doing the AP, that kind of answering phone, fielding questions. And, you know, I take the job very seriously. I think the business office has to be responsive to the faculty and staff, as well as the public. It's been tax season. I field a lot of phone calls for the tax bills, and that all cuts into what I can focus on. So I'm hoping that the board will agree with me that we can find a support staff so that we can really maximize what we can do in the business.
Just to piggyback on that, it is on a recommendation of mine on the consent agenda. 2 years ago, the previous business official tried an experiment. It was when we had transferred most of our functions up to the central business office at BOCES. We had an account clerk in here 2 days a week. The business official at that time recommended to me that we transfer all of the functions up to BOCES and that she felt she could manage the office. That was an inaccurate assessment at that time. And when Ruth was hired, the first thing I told her was she needed to make an assessment of all of the functions of the business office and make a recommendation to me. She just came back with a recommendation. To get the highest quality person, we're looking to partner with Sullivan West. And they're in need of an account clerk as well. And rather than each of us trying to hire a half-time person, we're looking to hire one good quality full-time person that we will share between the two districts. That works towards our shared services that we're required to do under the tax cap legislation. So it's favorable in that light. Ruth has looked, we do have the money in the budget to do this. And we're also looking to do this and co-serve it through BOCES if at all possible so we can get aid back on it. But we haven't gotten an official answer on that. But tonight we're asking the board to approve creating the half-time position as a shared position.
Any questions? Okay, then our district report from Mr. Dufour.
So first and foremost, it's my honor and privilege every year at this time to use my official authority to recognize our school board. And at this time, I would like to read a proclamation that's also on our consent agenda. Whereas each year, School Board Recognition Week is observed by more than 700 school boards throughout the state. And whereas the men and women serving as members of school boards are dedicated to children, learning, and community, and devote many hours of service to public education as they strive for improvement, excellence, and progress in education. And whereas the board members of the Eldred Central School Board are community leaders who provide an invaluable resource as local decision makers while serving in the interests of school children and their future. And whereas during the October 26th through October 30th, 2015, the Eldred Central School District will observe School Board Recognition Week, and it is fitting to join in acknowledging the commitment and contributions of its members. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Robert M. Dufour, Superintendent of Schools, recognize October 26th through October 30th as School Board Recognition Week. This is just a small token to thank each and every one of you for what you do for our children every day. A piece of paper, a citation, or a proclamation is little thanks, but it is a token for what you do for our kids, and we all certainly appreciate it. But I will present you with your proclamations. So I just have a couple of items that I'd like to go over. As a result of our discussion at last month's meeting, I am forming a substance abuse prevention task force. which will include parents, students, teachers, counselors, social service providers, law enforcement, and community representatives. The purpose of the task force is to better coordinate our prevention programs in both buildings. It's anticipated that the first meeting will be scheduled within the coming weeks. I also had the opportunity to meet with Martin Colavito, Director of Prevention Services for Catholic Charities and the Recovery Center, and members of his staff. We discussed bringing the Teen Intervene program to district on December 4th to train our counselors, coaches, nursing, and other staff in this program that is designed to use brief intervention with substance-abusing adolescents. We are also looking to do another broader presentation to the entire staff called Alcohol, Tobacco, and Other Drugs. They've also recommended the Botfin Life Skills Training, which is a research-validated substance abuse prevention program proven to reduce the risks of alcohol, tobacco, drug use, and violence by targeting the major social and psychological factors that promote the initiation of substance use and other risky behaviors. Ms. Keegan, Mr. Krebs, our counseling staff, and I are looking into this program to determine how it can best be implemented into our curriculum. I also had a conference call with Shelley Richards of EPIC. EPIC stands for Every Person Influences Children. EPIC was recommended to us at a recent board meeting by one of our parents. The program focuses on increasing family engagement in education through a variety of educational programs, presentations, and activities. Ms. Keegan, Mr. Krebs, and I have a follow-up conference call scheduled for October 23rd. There are costs involved with this program, and it's our intent to see if those costs are manageable while exploring the opportunities that this program may offer to our community. We have compiled our unofficial Beds Day enrollment data. Our unofficial number at this time is 607 students registered in district. This does not include out-of-district placements and BOCES students. The number is unofficial because the Beds window is no longer the first week of October. It actually runs from the beginning of October through November 14th. So until we officially submit it, it's unofficial. And finally, in conjunction with NACL Theater in Eldred, we have established an Artist in Residence program for the 2015-2016 school year. NACL Theater teaching artists will work with students and teachers to develop a 6 to 8 week program. Once per week, a professional theater artist from NACL will come in to the Eldred Central School District and work with students and teachers. This fall, we will be working with grade 3 in their social studies curriculum on communities, and we will be working with grade 8 in their social studies curriculum on industrialization. In the spring, they will be coming in to work with our social studies and English teachers in the high school. So that's all I have.
Any questions? Okay, I have two things. First, the Mackenzie celebration that you folks did, Ms. Keegan, Mrs. Robertson, Mr. DeFore, everybody involved, was outstanding. We got a front row seat to see just amazing stuff, you know. The kids, the pre-K kids were right up front, you know, and it it was really amazing to be here. If you missed it, I'm sorry, it really was good. Second thing,
There's pictures on the website.
Yeah, there were, yeah, so the pictures, but the pictures can do no justice. You know, myself, Brian, Linda, you know, we had the opportunity to attend it, and it was really good, so.
Your remarks were perfect too. I don't remember everything you said, and I know you get nervous in public speaking and everything, but you did.
But Mr. DeFore was quoted as having said them, so.
You know, so thank you, because I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't recall saying anything. And I always keep a copy of it, and I'm like, I didn't say that.
So if you read the Democrat,
Yeah.
I
know that. Just so we all know, Mr. DeFore does not dance. I saw that.
Yeah, I got it in the paper, right? But I told Bonnie that yesterday, and I'm like, Bonnie, was I at this thing? She goes, yeah, why? I said, because I don't recall saying any of this.
You know, but
No, I didn't. No, I know I didn't. I just don't remember who did.
but in particular, I think you opened it up by saying that we're celebrating the building, of course, right? It's 20 years of the building, but really it has nothing to do with the building. It's about the people inside of it, and I thought that was just really, really Well said.
Yeah, and the folks, in case you weren't there, I've said this as many times as I've addressed people, our teachers especially, Maria Treakin says, I believe that education, public education especially, is about a relationship that kids have with adults. And I believe that since I started teaching a long time ago. So this building really, yeah, we're going to celebrate this building, but really we're celebrating the relationships that all of our kids have had, with so many great people in this building. That's really what we're celebrating. It's not really about the bricks and the mortar, which is what the big guy got quoted as having said.
The big guy.
And I just want to note, Bonnie did 90% of it. She is
Well,
the one
yeah,
who went, she was, I turned Bonnie.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where the hell did you go?
Yeah.
She's down at McKenzie, because she was working on this, and she did most of the work of putting this together, and she did a phenomenal job.
Very well done. Yes. Thank you. Any,
Just add something.
absolutely,
If you had not been outside to see the playground, which we could not see tonight,
right.
I would implore you to see it because our custodial staff put that together. And I will tell you, it was in boxes and boxes and boxes.
You have no idea what I always meant.
Oh, yeah.
Literally, no, you have no idea.
So you really do need to see it
It's well worth
and
your
walk
time.
on the surface.
Yes.
They hit an artesian well while they were doing this, and I walked over and I looked in, I said, I didn't know we had a swimming pool on this, and I went, go.
And they did it in the most humid weather. It was the most humid.
They did all the work in August, so they did a great job with it.
Yeah, the whole thing came together just really, really well. Kudos to all involved. The second thing that I wanted to share with you folks is that myself, Amador, Bob, and Ruth, we went to the Sullivan County School Boards Association, the meeting on October the 5th at Livingston Manor. And the meeting itself was, mostly business, but the guest speaker that was invited to speak was Charlie D. He didn't even pronounce his last name, so I'm not going to attempt it. He called himself Charlie D.
Yes.
He's the executive vice president of Empire Resorts. So the facility that got the gaming license at the Concord. The thing that I found to be most interesting about what he said, and please correct me if I misquote the gentleman, okay? He said that he feels that our school districts will only be impacted by about between 50 and 100 students. Now, he's talking about all the school districts in the county. And we were all like in awe of having him said that. And he answered the question by saying, well, that's easy. We plan to hire people that already live here. So we don't plan to bring new people into our communities.
Right.
They plan to hire people that already live here. So, and he wanted to let us know that he's going to compete for our people. He's going to want to hire our people, which I felt was a very interesting thing. So anyway, they don't plan on hiring too many outside folks. Folks that already live here and are invested in our communities and our school districts. They're the folks that they're going to look for to hire, and more importantly, they want skilled people. And so look out, because your folks might be coming to work for us.
Did he say how many jobs are available or will be?
I think when they get everything all said and done, 2,500.
I'm thinking that was it.
Right?
They're going to be opening,
2,500.
they're required to open the casino within an fixed amount of time.
Yeah.
And that's not uncommon in these type of projects.
Once their gaming license is issued, they have 2 years to open the doors.
The casino. They have 3 phases to the project. There's then the hotel, that goes with the casino, then there's an entertainment village. So it's a multi-year project, but as soon as their license is issued, and it should be issued by December, the clock starts ticking. They must break down and have the casino itself set and ready to open within a certain amount of time, or they're going to lose the license. That's their first thing to focus on. Then he will start building the hotel, and then they'll start building the village. So the jobs are going to be added in phases. They anticipate that the only outsiders that they're bringing in will probably be key executive positions that require a specific skill set to help run the operation. But all the others, from the electricians to the game people, the security, is all going to be local people. And they're all going to be union wage jobs. They're fully unionized, so they're all going to be union wage jobs with benefits.
We had a lengthy discussion at the Sullivan BOCES board meeting on Tuesday night about the speaker. He was apparently very impressive.
Very good.
In very many ways. And one of the things that they brought up at the BOCES board meeting was that they had a room full of people to interview for early jobs. And they announced that they would not be hiring anybody with tattoos or piercings, and that they would be drug testing. And 1/3 of the room left. So, BOCES prepares a lot of students for the world of work as well. And they did say the same thing, that they will be seeking the educated people of our communities to take on the jobs at the casino, and they'll be paying well. But they also asked, what can we do to prepare our students better for who are you looking for? And they literally said life skills, the ability to make eye contact, to shake someone's hand, to not come dressed like you were hanging out in the street corner, but all those old-fashioned skills that we still know are important, but it's harder to relate to that younger generation, that they can't even go get their first job without meeting the expectations. So I thought it was fascinating.
Well put. Very good. Okay, that's all I had. The next thing on our agenda is public comment, but limited to our consent agenda. Now, our consent agenda is 401 to 705, and I believe everything is good to go as written. So if we have any public comment, I'd be happy to hear it, or we'd be happy to hear it, excuse me.
I believe it's okay to address the counseling plan, but I'm not sure. I spoke to Mr. before.
It's on the agenda, sure.
So please excuse my attire. I thought I was hauling pumpkins tonight.
But they're all out.
That's good. My wheels started turning when Mr. Krebs was speaking about the counseling plan. I don't have a single credit in special ed. I don't have a single credit in counseling. Yet probably every teacher on this earth now works as a special ed teacher, works as a counselor, works as a mentor in our buildings, because the need is there and we take care of our children. As a member of the RTI committee for many years, one of the things that we did was a Check and Connect program with certain children that needed some special time with adults. So now my brain is going to all the other things that we do. We do PATH, we do PBIS, we have conversations with our children about self and others. It's part of our social studies curriculum in kindergarten already. Wonderful discussions with these kids. The other thing we have is a therapy dog on campus every day. And I didn't know what this program was going to look like when we started it. I thought, okay, the goal is to make sure that all the children who chose to interact with the dog had the chance, that we would be inviting children to read to the dog, and basically the reading part, the educational part. And I'm discovering that I do Check and Connect every day with all of the kids who would like to visit with the dog. I stand out in the lobby every morning. That's where my children meet me. I started that long before the dog because I felt that it was an opportunity for me to continue a relationship with the children as they leave my door. And so that was very rewarding. So after I finished teaching pre-K, I said, I like it out in that hallway. You hear a lot, you see a lot, you get to see the parents, and it's good communication. So here I have a dog now, and I see how the children draw to the dog, and it starts their day off very nicely. So regarding the counseling plan, that is part of counseling in many ways, and I am wondering if we could take advantage of that by exploring grant opportunities so we can bring money into this district, because nobody else has a program like this. Children get to see a visiting dog in other districts. It's once a year, maybe once or twice a year. It's like an assembly. It's intense and exciting that day, and then it drifts from their minds. So this dog is here all the time. The dog is providing more service than just the warm and fuzzy stuff, and we're seeing it. So should we not take advantage? I did attempt to write my first grant in June. It was the retired teachers offered $1,000 for some kind of innovative program, and I took a shot at it and didn't win it, but I really don't know about grants. And the program wasn't up and running yet. It was speculation. We didn't have outcomes, but we will this year. So
Are you keeping data?
Just some thought. Excuse me.
Are you keeping data? You will have outcomes, you said?
Well, I don't.
She pre-tested the dog.
What did I do?
Pre-tested, post-tested.
I mean, we see a lot of things in the building with how the dog is involved with the student body. Can I count? I don't know how to write it down. I'm not a data person. I don't know how to judge it. There are a lot of things that are confidential.
Sure.
So
The dog can't talk.
the dog can't talk. So I don't know how we can prove that it's amazing, but I think if we watch the hidden cameras around, that would tell a lot. And I think the adults in the building who have witnessed a lot of good things could testify. But it's part of counseling.
It certainly is.
And it's a unique part, and we have it.
Yeah.
You know, we set the pace for that, so that's really kind of cool.
I don't know if this would be acceptable for a grant submission in terms of, demonstrating the value, but if you had kids just write down what River has done for them or how they feel about River, that would be fun for the kids to do. Maybe that would help too, because you get a lot of positive feedback on it.
I mean, River, I don't know if you're aware of it, but she writes a blog. And the writing is geared to be humorous for adults and amusing, and it's also challenging for all the levels. So it's intended to be fun and educational because she gives safety messages and kindness messages. She encourages children to share stories and pictures of their own pets. And it's all linked to, it goes to my website. And it's really pretty funny that parents really didn't hit my website for rules and standards. This dog has over 1,500 hits already. So, but this is also important for our building and our school. The community knows this dog. Kids were coming into preschool knowing the dog, never having seen her. And we really, I wonder if we can explore different grants for this. But I don't know. So thank you. Excuse me?
No, I'm just talking to these guys and how we could go about that. Okay. Well, once we free you up.
Maybe she was identifying a source.
No, I understand.
And
I do.
it's a very, very narrow
Talk, there's some PTA stuff that you can do.
type of stuff.
This is Lombardi, it is really wonderful. I mean, I see it every
It
day
is.
because I bring in kids in and you can always tell where River is because there's like a huddle of kids. You
That's
can't
why they
pass
moved
them.
me back a little bit when I was
Did you say
walking.
puddle?
Huddle, I say huddle, no, not a huddle.
On the radio guys, there's a couple of kids.
No, and it's great, and at the open house, I don't know who announced the faculty, I don't know if it was you, Mr. DeFore? We'll quote you on it anyway, you announced the
I wasn't
faculty.
there.
And- What?
I wasn't there at the open.
No, at the open house, at the celebration.
Oh, okay.
They announced River as a faculty member. And it's true, I mean, she's here every day, she's part of the
Then it was
school.
me.
It's great. It was you, of course, it might have been Doug, but it's you.
Yeah.
The only thing that, I hope it's not on I can't even speak anymore sometimes, APPR. Mr. DeFore is that I didn't embroider her bed. with
Well,
her
that's
name.
still an issue.
Yeah. I might,
The dog talks to me because the dog lives in my office.
Oh, I see.
And the poor thing is in there, and with all of the attention and as famous as she's become, she's sleeping in an unembroidered bed without her name on it, and that's going to influence Mrs. Lombardi's APPR.
But did she get 1,500 on the SAT?
I don't care. I don't care, she sleeps under my desk, that's fine, but the poor thing doesn't have her name on her bed. That's an issue.
Okay, okay, very good.
he's costing me a fortune.
Do we have any other public comments for the consent agenda? Okay. So the consent agenda is 401 to 705. I can see some issue with a couple of things that we'll remove. First, let's remove 6.03. And we also need to remove one of the coaching appointments.
You don't need to vote on this.
No?
We have every right
You
to
don't,
vote
you
on
have
it.
every right to vote on it. You do not have an interest in it, it's not you do not have to do that.
What's that?
I'm fine.
You're fine with voting for it?
You don't have to do
All
that.
right,
I
all right.
checked it out, you don't have to do
I
it.
heard you. I don't want, listen, I don't want to make any problems. The other thing that we need to point out is on 607, we have approval upon the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Jennifer Anderson to the position of typist effective like 2 weeks ago. And we want to recognize Mrs. Anderson. Okay, so let's get a motion to
I'll make a
accept the
motion that we
consent
accept the
agenda as
consent
written.
agenda as written.
Second.
Any discussion?
I have some comments on 401 and some questions on 705. I don't think they're going to require us to move those out, I just want to ask some questions. So 401 are the minutes from August 13th and September 10th meetings. Just a couple of questions on this one. On the August 13th meeting minutes, 1.03, a representative from Large Media came in to give a discussion of the district brochure, and he was soliciting feedback on all that. Has that now been published and it's out? So it's on. Okay, great. That's wonderful. That was very
And
good.
we've now turned it over to the BOCES COSA for maintenance and upkeep on it. But they went
No,
out-
I mean the brochure itself.
Right, well, they went out second week of September. They were mailed to all of the realtors in this immediate area in Port. We sent some over in Milford too, Monticello.
And just to comment on number 9, there are a couple of things under, so there's one thing under new business, number 9 on the August minutes, and so there's one more thing, number 10. So my comment relates to number 9 and number 10. Number 9 is when I suggested the idea of incorporating local history and working with John Conway to incorporate some local history in our curriculum. And number 10 is where Mrs. Ducher had recommended us to look into the EPIC program. And there have been a number of things that have come up under public comment lately that are actually wonderful ideas that the public is bringing to our attention, including those two things and others. And I think that we have to be more responsive to these things. I mean, we have to if the public takes the time to come in and present something to us, we should immediately pursue it, whether we initially think it's a good idea or whether it's going to take a lot of work, but it should be done right away. And on both of these things, the local history suggestion, which the board all concurred that was a good idea for us to explore, and the EPIC program, which was well articulated by Mrs. Ducher, we didn't act upon those until just this week. And on one of them, it required, actually on both of them, it required some extensive follow-up on behalf of myself and Mrs. Ducher to follow up and see if those things could happen. But that's over 2 months since they came to our meeting. So I'm just asking, I'm not asking to clarify the minutes or record it in any way, but if the public takes time to come present ideas to us, let's make sure that we respond quickly. I have some comments on the September meeting minutes. On 9.01 on the September minutes. There was a discussion about the Ask a Board Member email address, and we all made the decision, which I think was a good decision, to inactivate that because it wasn't going to the entire board, it was going to only a select group of people. And there was a discussion about the validity of having that discussion and whether it was worthwhile exploring. And the answer was that, well, that email address doesn't get used very frequently. But there's only a handful of emails that have come in. Now, it turns out that, I was suspicious of that because I get a lot of questions from people, as you, I'm sure, do all the time. The public constantly has questions for the board. So to know that an email address was out there for a number of years, and we didn't get any questions or emails from the public, or a small number of emails, it just didn't sound right. So, long story short, I'm glad we got rid of it because a lot of emails went to a small group of people when I think a significant number of people thought they were going elsewhere. So, Mr. DeFore, you estimated that there were probably less than 10 emails in the past 3 years, and Doug, you thought that there were less than 5 emails in the past 5 or 6 years. So I submitted a FOIL request to look at all of the activity for that email address. And it turns out that there were significantly more than 10 requests. There were actually 66 emails that went to that email address. Now, I know the time flies and you kind of lose track of things and it's hard to remember, but there were 66 emails. I mean, that's significantly more than the estimate of 5 emails that you thought were sent to that email address. Now, my family happened to account for 4 of those emails, and we never got a reply from the board at all. So I'm glad that we now have a delineated place where parents know that, and members of the public know that when they email somebody, they're emailing somebody directly, and they should expect an answer. But again, there were 66 emails sent to that email address. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I have a question on 705 on this consent agenda, which is the creation of a new position called account clerk. Okay, so the question is, have we had an account clerk position in the past, or is this a new?
Well, I'd explained that before. We did have one up to 2 years ago, and it was a 2-day-a-week position that was a posted position through BOCES. When the previous business official took over, they had recommended we discontinue that service because they felt they did not need the individual in the office. I asked them at that time if they were absolutely sure they didn't need that assistance because the business official before felt it was needed. They assured me that they did not, and I permitted them to transfer those positions up to BOCES, and there were some formal board motions to do that. Not getting into personnel matters, the individual was incorrect. The individual got in over their head and fell significantly behind in their work, which is part of the reason that they're no longer employed by the school district. So when Mrs. Lewis was hired, the first thing I told her was, this is where we were 2 years ago. I need to know if we need to go back to that, or do we need to go somewhere in between. There's a significant volume of work handled by the business office, and it is too much for one person to do. But it is not a full-time position either, because the CBO provides a significant amount of our functions. But when the employees have a question about their pay, or if there is an issue with benefits, when there's only one person there, very often they can't get the answer in as timely as manner as we like to give it to them.
Is there a dollar value associated with it?
It's a scale position, so it's civil service. And I can go back and let you know, whatever the civil service rate is the rate that we must pay. Okay, and then it will come in under our CSEA agreement, but under civil service, they've got to be on the civil service list, they've got to be within, on a current list within the county, and the pay rate is stipulated by the position. So it's not a rate we set, we actually will get the current civil service rate, and that's the rate we would have to
Do you have a ballpark on what the impact of the budget would be this year?
It's roughly 30,000 from what I figured, and that is inclusive of if the person were to come in and want full-time benefits, which would be shared between Sullivan West and Eldred. And we would put them on Eldred's benefits and be an Eldred employee because our health insurance is much less than what Sullivan West pays.
So that's
they
why they're a
would
full-time employee of Eldred with reimbursement from Sullivan West versus the other way around? Okay. That makes sense.
It's still, even that arrangement still counts as a shared position, because
And
they're
that's-
paying us for that service.
That's a rough figure because, you know, you have to figure in those fringes, which I took a percentage, so it's not, it's close.
And so I take your recommendation very seriously, Mr. DeFore, and the question I would say is, as we were looking at the structural changes that we might have to explore, that I described earlier about the reserve fund, do you feel confident that this is not going to set us back in any way? Having
At this time,
additional
yes.
position? Okay.
I think it may be very close to breaking even in what it's going to allow me to do.
Okay.
Because I also have Affordable Health Care Act, reporting, monitoring, tracking, and that brings with it, if it's not done timely, penalties.
I got
So,
you.
The full effective ACA takes place within the next 24 months, unless we're fortunate, a Republican becomes the next president, liquidates the act. But barring that, we still have to implement it. So it's a massive unfunded mandate because we have to comply or we are penalized. And those penalties are excessive. So every district, not just us, every district is having the exact same thing. Some of them are looking to COSA a full-time employee through BOCES to help coordinate this because the reporting requirements are just so astronomical. And you make one misstep, and you know, it's not a slap on the wrist, they're hitting you with a brick.
And you mentioned that that was something that you're exploring, the COSA.
I've asked BOCES, I'm waiting for them to get back to me. What we always try to do, Brian, is we try to take the best option for the district. So if, and I've already spoke to my colleague over in Sullivan West, so if BOCES says, yes, if you do this, this, and this, they can be our employees, you use them, because that's what BOCES is there for, and you will get X aid on it. But that falls under certain segments of BOCES regulations, but I have spoken to the deputy superintendent, she's researching it. Dr. Hackett has already agreed with me that if it is COSAable, meaning aidable, that's the route we're going to go with it. But we still need the motion to create the position no matter what.
And again, I mean, the questions have nothing to do with second guessing your recommendation, because I do take that very seriously. The struggle I have is when you have money in the budget, and I know we do, and we want to apply it to an administrative function, the question is, does that in some way impact somewhere down the road our ability to use that money for instruction? So, and it sounds like it's not that at all, so, okay, thank you. That's all my questions, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? So then, we're gonna vote on the consent agenda. Brian?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Mr. Absent, on board?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes then as well. Okay. That takes us to old business. Mr. DeFore, you want to talk to us about protest?
At the last meeting, you asked me to look into the feasibility, legalities, et cetera, of drug testing. You all should have this packet. I sent it to you digitally over the last couple of weeks, but I also had Bonnie put a hard copy in there. Long and the short of it, based on the information I was able to obtain through my own legal research and through an opinion letter from your attorney, which is included in the packet, there are two conflicting statutes under New York State education law. one statute permits the drug testing of students with parental consent and the creation of a policy. The second, which was an appeal of a case that was brought under the first statute, indicates that though you can have a drug testing policy, lack of parental consent does not permit you to deny them participation in extracurricular activities or athletics. So if a parent refuses to allow you to test their child, you cannot penalize the child. So one part of the law tends to negate the other. I put out on my professional association listserv trying to find out whether or not any district in New York State was currently drug testing their students. That's this document that's in there. I received no answers, and I received a reply from them about 2 weeks later. That does not necessarily mean they're not doing it. Nobody responded. I asked Mr. Gass to put out something through OCIAA, which is the Orange County Interscholastic Athletic Association, to see if anyone in the region was doing it. And Mr. Gass received no replies from OCIAA or his colleagues. I asked our attorney to do some research. They replied to me that they could not document any schools that were doing it. So it would seem that if, also included, I spoke with my colleague over in Delaware Valley, and I included a copy of their drug testing policy. If you take the time to read through their drug testing policy is not punitive, it's restorative. So if you read through it carefully, and again, you got to remember, even though it's on the other side of the river, it's a different state. The laws are different. Delaware Valley implemented their drug testing policy, and they were sued, and they won the suit. And that lawsuit gave them the foundation going forward to continue doing what they're doing. And basically, the judge ruled that if a parent did not give consent, that constituted, which to be treated as a negative result, a positive result on a drug test. And if you read through their policy, they cannot put any documentation in a student file if you test positive. They cannot discipline you if you test positive. They can deny you privileges, including parking on campus. But if you go through their, it's kind of a, 10-step program, those privileges can be restored to you. So if you're a first-time offender and you test positive on the drug test, you got to go into a student assistance program, which is like an employee assistance program, which is a counseling program for substance abuse. And you have to, it's in there, I'm just going to talk off the top of my head without referring back. I think you needed to be tested each week for 5 weeks, and those tests had to be negative. And at the end of that time, you would be restored to whatever privileges were denied you. But come across this side of the river, New York State law does not permit us to do that. We cannot penalize a student if the parent says no. The parents that are going to say yes are those parents who we'd expect to say yes. The parents who are going to say no are going to do so on principle or because they don't want you testing their kids. And there's another issue that Delaware Valley has been dealing with where up front, parents have to betray some confidentiality on their children because when they consent to the drug testing, they've got to let the school district know if their children are on any prescription drugs the district may not know about because they're going to show up in the drug testing. And many parents, basically, it's none of our business. If they wish to tell us, that's fine, but they're not under any obligation to tell us. So it's a mixed bag, but it would seem under law, one nullifies the other. So you can spend a significant amount of money to implement a policy that basically has no teeth and is unenforceable.
So not only parents, the student would have to consent also.
No, because they're minors. You need parental consent.
So if they physically
refuse and you have parental consent, it's treated as a positive because they're refusing to take the test. That's how, you would have to write a policy to that, but until they're 18, they don't legally get to make those decisions. So if the parent says, you can test my child, and the child refuses, that's something the parent and the kid's got to deal with. But your policy would need to address that. And that is a possibility.
Is that supported in New York law?
I did not address that in my research. I did not find anything in my research, nor did I address it with the attorney, because as a minor, what they want to do doesn't count if what's the parent, if it's the parent is the one that has to give the permission. Similarly, if the parent says no, the kid can't say yes until they're 18 years old, and they're legally allowed to make those decisions for themselves.
I think it's pretty clear that we're not going to
Yeah, I think there's a reason
implement
that
any
schools
drug
aren't-
testing.
in New York State are not doing this.
I'm not saying they're not, I don't know of any. And that's what I believe I said at the last meeting.
There's also-
I was not aware. And you know, not for nothing, in there's 690 odd school districts. It's a very small circle. That type of stuff you usually wind up knowing about, even if it's a district 1,000 miles away. You usually wind up hearing or knowing. Do you know of any districts in all of your dealings with athletics?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No.
What about the question of, besides legality, about the wisdom of drug testing? Have you, because I've asked some questions, and I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but I talked to a couple of recovering addicts who had a very strong opinion about the wisdom and the benefit of drug testing. And Doug, I know you have an opinion about that too, but has anybody done any research about whether it's even a wise or successful thing to do if you're trying to impact the drug problem and help kids? No?
Not that I'm aware of.
So, I mean, this is anecdotal because I only talked to 3 people, but after the first drug seminar that Doug and Linda and I attended in Port Jervis, there was another seminar, a very similar thing with a lot of the same panelists. And I attended that, but actually at that time I had a chance to actually ask a question to the panel. And the question was basically, look, our coaches came to our school board and made a recommendation that we drug test athletes because we have to do something to help these kids and deal with the problem. But 1, is it legal? And 2, is it appropriate and helpful to do it? And there was a mixed reaction. The law enforcement officials that were part of the panel had said that they think that drug testing is a good idea. In fact, the lieutenant and sergeant from the Port Jervis Police, the chief and the detective, or the chief and the lieutenant from the Port Jervis Police Department's children attend Delaware Valley, and they thought that Delaware Valley policy was great, and they appreciate that it's in place. The recovering heroin addict who was on the panel echoed similar sentiments as the recovering heroin addict of the earlier seminar in Port Jervis, and basically said, when I started doing heroin, and I was an athlete in high school, I found out that they were going to test me or they were going to not let me play soccer or basketball, whatever it might be, I would just quit the sports team. The drug at that point is way more important than athletics, and it wouldn't have deterred me. In fact, it may have actually aggravated my drug abuse. Now, again, that's only 3 people, so it's anecdotal, but I wonder if there's research that indicates whether, aside from the legal issues, whether it's helpful.
I don't know if there's research, but people I spoke to kind of echoed a lot of that because the ones that you're not going to be concerned about are the ones whose parents are going to readily consent. If the ones with a problem, there are options. And one of those options is not to go out for extracurricular activities and just go home, because as you say, the influence of that drug outweighs any benefit the other programs do. So the one thing that may be keeping them in school, which is those extracurricular activities, whether it be band, whether it be the drama club, whether it be a student council, whether it be sports, if that's turned off because they don't want to be drug tested, they could drop out of school completely. Don't know, but there is research out there showing that there are many, many at-risk students who those extracurricular activities are the only thing getting them through that schoolhouse door every day. So you could shut a window. That's at least, I think our focus needs to be on the road of prevention and putting a good concrete prevention curriculum in place. And we've done a lot of research, as you can see, over the past month, making these inquiries. And I think that is a far more proactive approach, because all of the research I've read indicates we need to start in the younger grades, down in kindergarten, believe it or not. Okay, and that's what these curriculums are based on, and they're all developmentally appropriate, but to make them aware of this stuff, and it's got to be ingrained, because if you can teach them while they're younger, you have a better chance of getting through it. So I think from a legal and a financial standpoint, focusing on prevention and preventative programs would be our best opportunity here. I don't think there's enough here from my research and the attorney's opinion letter that would justify us going through the time and effort to draft a policy, because there will be a cost factor that we would need to budget for, and we know anything we do would be starting off inherently flawed because there would be no teeth to it. New York is a very, very liberal state, and that's reflected in many of the laws that we have on the books. And where a good thing is put in place, the SAVE legislation that was put in after Newtown. I'm starting to see during this election cycle people with yard signs, repeal SAVE, repeal SAVE. I know it was flawed when it was implemented, but I don't think it was inherently flawed. I think keeping guns out of the hands of people and regulated is a good thing based on what we've seen historically. But that's New York. What was good 2 years ago could be turned over in this election cycle if it's put on as a referendum.
But no, the reason I asked about the wisdom is because if it's not if it would not be a successful program, in other words, it wouldn't save anybody's life, then it really doesn't matter what the legal aspects are. So I guess that's the question that we still don't know how to answer.
I don't think we do know.
But then, so then if that's not the case, and I know the drug task force, by the way, which is a wonderful idea, is focused, it looks like exclusively on prevention, but there's still a piece I think that has to be discussed, and maybe the drug task force is the place to discuss it, which is how can we, in the strongest way possible, enforce drug policy. In other words, discipline, address drug use in kids currently, without the ability to drug test them. I know it's challenging and stuff, but I mean, the fact is, there are kids that are currently using drugs, and they need help too.
Well, the Teen Intervene, and I haven't included it because I was just on the phone with them today, is that program targeted for that.
Okay.
To get those kids that are on the cusp or may have stepped over. And that's the program I discussed with Martin Colavito. And we had actually, they headed in Fallsburg in September, but not everyone was given enough notice to get people there. So we're actually hosting it, and I'm inviting the other districts in to participate in the training. But we're focusing our counseling staff, we're focusing on our nurses, we're having our coaches attend, our administrators attend, our health teachers attend, and that program is basically geared towards providing a select group of people with the tools to do immediate intervention. The other program is a general awareness program to provide the entire faculty and staff with the what's and the wherefores of what to look for. So one is a kind of a crisis intervention program, one is a general knowledge program. And I think that's the best direction for us to go at this point. As far as discipline when it comes to drugs, etc., I can't get into specific details. We're dealing with a situation that developed in the past 2 days, Mr. Krebs and I. But when they wind up before us, we have a firm and fast pattern we've followed of punishment. But even the punishment we make to be restorative, because we give them options, because putting a kid out of school for 45 days isn't the answer to the problem.
Right.
So whenever we are faced with those situations, we try to open a window. Well, if you go and get voluntarily drug tested, because I can't mandate that, and you come back with a clean drug test, I'll reconvene the hearing and return you to school earlier. If you enroll in the DATA program, and it's another program that's run by the Recovery Center, which is a day treatment program where they actually focus on treatment and academics are secondary. And we give them credit for their schoolwork. So we give our students options when they get into that point, and many of them take advantage of those options. Many of the parents take advantage of those options. Some of them don't. So we try, we focus on the restorative as well. We have a very firm and fast policy we follow. 45 days first offense, 90-day second offense, you're out for the entire year, third offense. And that's not in 1 year. We're talking about if you're caught. But we try to push them into these restorative programs because keeping them out of school isn't the answer. And unfortunately, it's the only thing we can do.
By the way, I see all the emails coming across, and I appreciate all the work that you're putting into answering your question. It sounds like we're on the right track. Thank you.
And then the next item on old business is a report from our subcommittee.
I can't get my email anymore because I've tried. Is it changed? You changed your email. So mine's on the track.
You want to present this?
Sure.
Okay.
Are you waiting on me, Doug?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is a committee report from the committee that, the subcommittee that Linda Bose and I have been working on. It's getting late, so I'm going to, and this is a lengthy report, so I'll read this as quickly as I can, but just quickly, an editorial comment from me, not on behalf of Linda, but, and not from the subcommittee. After the last board meeting, Linda and I met to consider feedback from yourselves and from Mr. DeFore. We also sat and met with Mr. DeFore, and as often has been the case, even when I was just a parent and now as a school board member, Mr. DeFore was extremely helpful in the feedback and the guidance that he provided. And I really appreciated Mr. DeFore because I was going down entirely the wrong path in terms of achieving the goals that we all collectively want to achieve. And I think there was some communication gaps about what we were all thinking. And I think we were a lot closer together than I suspected. So after we met and after Linda and I met, we came up with a completely different approach. And the only reason why I think that this approach is going to work is because we have you as our superintendent. And I'll explain that in the committee report, but I think that we're uniquely equipped to pull this off based on our having you. And so again, I appreciate your help. So here's the report on our recommendation. We'll ask for a motion on this to move forward. Upon reviewing the board's feedback and consulting with Superintendent DeFore, we have decided to change course. We've concluded that the originally proposed public hearing is not the best way forward. This approach may have had the unintended consequence of creating an adversarial dynamic between the various stakeholders, hampering our collective desire to maintain a partnership between parents, teachers, community members, the administration, and the Board of Education. It is our sincere opinion that Eldred is uniquely equipped to address these issues within the context of our standard public meeting process. We are fortunate to have our superintendent with the robust experience, depth of knowledge, open-mindedness, and communication skills required to lead a productive conversation to fully explore these issues and to partner with the board and the community to identify positive solutions. For these reasons, we offer the following recommendation. The board should direct Mr. DeFore to provide an informative presentation at our regular November meeting that would answer the following questions. Side note, not in any order. I appreciate your feedback. Your presentation may include it'll include the information, but in a different order. So the questions that are to be addressed by Mr. DeFore's presentation are, what are the, quote, Common Core standards, and how do they impact our students and teachers at each grade level? How are the Common Core standards related to the, quote, state-mandated standardized tests? How are the Common Core standards and state assessments driving daily activities in our classrooms? For example, selection of curricula, learning modules, textbook and worksheets, lesson plans, student schedules, etc. Have the state assessments led to an increased focus on test preparation at the expense of instructional time, elective classes, art, music, and gym, recess time, lunchtime, field trips, social interactivity, creative pursuits, and/or fun activities? If so, how can we minimize these negative impacts? What are the federal and state requirements regarding Common Core standards and state assessments? What are the district's absolute requirements, and in which areas may we exercise discretion? Are there any instances in which we are unnecessarily exceeding our minimum requirements? For example, module implementation and/or standardized testing in lower grades. What role do the Common Core standards and state assessments play in the teacher evaluation process, APPR? To what extent may our teachers deviate from prescribed modules and curricula? What have our teachers and administration learned from the flawed implementation of Engage New York? Based on our own experience and observations, what has our district done to alleviate the burden on our students and teachers? And what are our future plans to insulate our district from excessive outside interference and ensure that our curriculum and classroom activities are appropriate for elderly students and teachers? Finally, what right do students and parents have to opt out or to refuse to participate in state assessments? And what is the process for those who wish to exercise these rights? How can our parents, teachers, students, and community members express their concerns regarding these issues to key decision makers and elected representatives? We ask Mr. DeFore to carefully consider political influences and biases as he cites various sources of information in response to these questions. For example, let's be sure to recognize that the New York State Commissioner of Education and Regents Chancellor are expressly committed to a relentless and uncompromising implementation of the Common Core standards and mandatory state assessments. While this may be the desire of some state and federal bureaucrats, a majority of parents, teachers, and citizens, including many in our own community, feel much differently. The state has been very heavy-handed in issuing threats to withhold funding and punish teachers, but they have not and likely cannot follow through with these threats. So we respectfully ask Mr. DeFore to consider the validity of statements from the Commissioner and Chancellor and other so-called education reform forces. Following Mr. DeFore's presentation, we recommend a period of public comment to solicit feedback and additional questions from members of the public, including parents, teachers, community members, and board members. Recognizing that our teachers are closest to these issues, and with sincere respect for their expertise as professional educators, our teachers should be encouraged to attend this meeting and offer their candid opinion regarding these important issues. Following Mr. DeFore's informative presentation and the public comment period, the board will draft a position statement on these issues to be disseminated publicly and privately through meetings with our elected representatives, including Congressman Gibson, Assemblyman Gunther, and Senator Bonasek, meetings with local and nearby members of the Board of Regents, a letter signed by the board and Mr. DeFore to Governor Andrew Cuomo's Education Commission, a letter signed by the board and Mr. DeFore to members of the New York State Assembly and New York State Senate Education Committees and chairpersons, and a letter signed by the board and Mr. DeFore to the New York State Commissioner of Education and the remaining members of the Board of Regents, a letter signed by the board to the New York State School Board Association. This fully transparent, comprehensive communication plan will allow the district to unequivocally state and officially record its policy on these issues, ensuring a consistent implementation throughout both schools. The district's policy regarding the Common Core standards, standardized testing, and related issues will be clearly explained to all administrators, faculty, and staff and enforced at all levels. We request a motion to direct Mr. DeFore to proceed with this plan as described in this report. Again, this report was modified and the approach was modified based on consultation with Mr. DeFore. He reviewed the language of this report, and I wanted to make sure there were no issues and that it wouldn't cause any kind of perception that there was any kind of adversarial approach to the way that the school is handling this. I just want it to be defined so that it's consistent. And I also think that it's not necessary to draw a dividing line between the public and the teachers versus the board and the administration. I think that we all collectively write these letters to our elected officials representing our position on behalf of our community, I think that it'd become very clear exactly where the district stands. And that's the reason for that new approach.
So Brian, you have feedback from a number of parents and other members that you came up with the bullet items?
The questions to be addressed in Mr. DeFore's
Correct.
presentation? Yes. Yeah, and I think there's some confusion, as we discussed. I don't think it's necessary to modify the approach that our teachers have taken to, making this work in our schools. I just think that there's still a lot of questions about exactly what all the pieces are and how they're interconnected and what they mean. Even I don't fully understand it, and Mrs. Carroll tries to explain it to me, and I appreciate that, but I'm still learning as well. But a lot of people get mixed up between what Common Core is versus state assessments, what's required and what's not. And I think it's helpful to have Mr. DeFore explain that to the public.
Mr. DeFore, you've seen the list?
I've seen it, and I explained to Brian that I need it left to my discretion how best to approach these issues. I also explained there are certain things which I'm required to do. I have to inform people of what the legal stand is on opting out, and then, of course, I can talk through other items, but I am obligated, because I'm a licensed officer of the state, to provide the legal interpretation, and I think you understand why I have to do that. If you're going to do anything, I think this is the most productive way of doing it, because there are two things that are in the wind. You have the Governor's Commission, and I just read in the past 2 days that you now have a Commissioner's Commission, which is going to be interesting because they're going to work at cross purposes. But either way, so you also have a possibility of a changeover in the Board of Regents come April. It's very clear that Chancellor Tisch probably will be stepping down. I haven't read anything indicating that she is going to put her name back in or seek to be reappointed. She's been there for, I guess, over 15 years now, right? Because she started in the late 90s as a regent, or the early 2000s as a regent. So if the board is going to take a position on any of these items, now would be the time to do that, and that needs to be, this is out of our control. We need to get the message to the people that are basically controlling our fate, which is our elected officials. We have good relationships with Aileen and good relationships with John. It looks like Congressman Gibson is going to be running for governor within the next couple of years. But a lot of what you're saying, because I'm just going to make an offhanded comment, you said state mandated standardized tests. Well, it's not completely accurate because it's federally mandated. So, and that's part of what this process I think you're looking for is. So having Congressman Gibson involved in this is important because that component is something the state mandates us to do on behalf of the federal government, and the only person who can change NCLB is the federal government. So there's a lot of those misconceptions out there. I think it's probably the most productive way of approaching this. I am fairly confident I can do it by November, barring any unforeseen circumstances, but I would just caveat it with that I will do my best for the November meeting. If there's anything that would preclude that, I'll notify you.
If it's more appropriate to ask for the presentation at the December meeting, that's fine as well. I just want it to be,
If you worded it by the December meeting, that would give me the opportunity because to do either one. I mean, if I can get this done before November, great, and I'll gladly do it.
Do we need a motion to move this forward? At this point, Brian is asking for a motion. What are we discussing here? Because we don't have a motion on the table.
He wants us to direct Bob to do the presentation.
But we don't need a motion for that, do we? Okay, I was waiting for a motion to speak, but I don't think we need a motion. And I also don't think that we need to state our position politically to the powers that be who can't do anything about Common Core anyway. I think that an informational presentation about Common Core to clear up a lot of the misunderstandings and misconceptions and that presentation would then include how Eldred is already tackling and how our teachers are already dealing with the Common Core, which would all be part of what you would present. So I think the idea of that information being shared and get as many people here as possible would be an excellent idea. I have no desire to sign a letter from the board on any position politicizing Common Core. I have no desire to stand with this board and this school in writing to or having meetings with politicians about what we think the federal government should or shouldn't do. I don't have enough time, energy, or desire to try to affect what the federal government is going to do on Common Core from this board's perspective. I think it takes our time and these employed people's time away from teaching our kids, focusing on what our kids need, and I just will not be part of. So for me, I would not make any motion, and I will not support that. But I would certainly support an informational and public comment as well. Certainly all of that. But the whole thing about the letters and the meetings is a waste of our people's time. You're not going to do anything with the New York Assembly or the New York State Education Committee. We are all bound by what the federal government is doing, and if we get a Republican, it might change. I'm not so sure it's good to get a Republican. So, don't let me go there right now. But the point is, sorry, but the point is, that's how I feel. So I don't want to see a motion. If you guys want to do a motion, you go right ahead and do a motion, but I don't want to do that position stuff.
Well, I also don't want to ask the board to do something that we're not all collectively comfortable with either. So that, the lack of the motion, I think, indicates that you're not comfortable with this approach. So I appreciate that, and let me just explain why we made the suggestion of writing letters, okay? Which has very little to do with our ability to actually impact federal or state policy. That wasn't the idea that, we in Eldred are going to make any kind of a significant impact in what state and federal bureaucrats do, because first of all, they don't care about what we think anyway, okay? The point of, candidly, the point of the letters was to have an official placeholder through which the district, the board, and Mr. Dufour can articulate our position on these issues. Because, again, complete, candid honesty, it is not consistently implemented throughout our entire district. In other words, Mr. Dufour's approach to these issues, which I wholeheartedly 100% agree with, is not followed through at all levels. There are people who disagree with it, and I think it's helpful for the district to put it in black and white so that there is no discretion that can be exercised with the way that we're treating these issues, if that makes sense. The reason we wanted to put it into a letter is because it wouldn't be confrontational. It would be us definitively stating our position and trying to influence these outside forces that are interfering in our schools. But one of the most important benefits of this is to make sure that everybody is clear how Mr. Dufour and the board feel about this.
And I think that would happen through a presentation. That's just how I feel, as opposed to forming any letters, because forming a position on any of this political trickling down that happens to us in the school district, forming a position is like shooting at a moving target, because it changes they've already changed the APBR, how many times? 2, 3? And they're going to change it again and again. So how can we have a position on the APBR when they keep changing the APBR? I don't want to spend the time or the energy on a position. Yeah. That's all. I understand what you're saying, and I like the idea of asking Mr. Dufour to clarify and make sure that it is then understood through all levels of teachers and administrators here, so that there is some, hopefully, consensus. But the fact that we give our teachers the freedom to teach what they think is important within all the guidelines they have to follow, yes, already means that they may not always agree with.
Okay, so that is my concern. Quite honestly, Carol, is that I'm not sure that we consistently do. I know Mrs. Neal, and I know you disagreed with me last time. We do not consistently throughout our entire district in both buildings allow that kind of discretion. We don't, and that's the problem. That's why I want for Mr. Dufour's position on this policy, which is answerable to the board, to be reflected at every level throughout our administration. And that's why it's important to define it. Now, maybe we can accomplish that with a public hearing. It's not a public hearing, a presentation with public input, but I think it's important in cases like this where there's not consistent implementation of district policy to spell it out. That was the entire purpose for this exercise. I don't want to waste anybody's time. I understand people overwork, and I don't want to cause any kind of dissension amongst the board. But the reason I approached it this way, and Carol and I, with Mr. DeFore's feedback, approached it this way, I'm sorry, Linda, was that we think that we have to ensure consistency from the top down.
And I guess I feel as a board member that if we say to Mr. DeFore, ensure consistency from the top down.
Can we say that?
Damn it, yes, we certainly can, but we can only say it to him.
Okay, here we
And
are.
then, done.
I've said it.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I agree
Yes.
with that. Ensure consistency. Make sure that all teachers feel the right to be flexible within their classrooms according to what he has already said and what I understand to be the way it is. So, Mr. DeFore, make that happen, and I would like to reiterate that, okay? Good. Ditto. Yeah.
Brian, I'm
Yeah.
confused now.
Yeah.
Then the communication with the politicians, the meetings with representatives, is that part of consistency in the district, or what was the goal for?
Well, it's two things. I mean, I don't have much faith that when we have a conversation with a politician that anything good comes of that. Okay, I don't.
So let's not do that.
Well, on the other hand, they are our elected officials, and we are a school district representing our constituents. So, and like I suggested early on when I first suggested this, is that if there's a conversation about education issues, it would be helpful to make sure that we are at the centerpiece of that. We are the Board of Education. I understand these issues have nothing to do with our district policy. These are outside influences. But I follow these discussions very closely. And what I see with both parties at both levels of government, state and federal, is they have no respect whatsoever for teachers or parents or students. And we're the only people that are best equipped to advocate for our teachers and our students and our parents. That's why I think it would be helpful. I understand Carol's perspective about the time and also getting in the mix of politics. But maybe it can be softer. But it has to be something to say, leave us alone. When you guys all meddling up there with your policies and stuff, our kids are caught in the middle and we're doing our very best to adapt to it, and our teachers are incredible in their ability to do that. But stop messing with us, because we can't continue to put everybody through this each and every time you make a change. And so I do think there's a role that we can play to advocate on behalf of our community.
If I could comment real quickly, this has been, just to carry off a little aside, this has been a discussion about education, which is refreshing, by the way, at board meetings, so we don't always get a chance. No, seriously, and you guys know that. You have to deal with the business. I would suggest that when Mr. DeFore comes with the informational presentation, that the time to formulate a motion might be at that point, and not at this point. That's just an observation.
Well, that was essentially what I wanted to, in my opinion. I am okay with most of what you've written, Brian. I really, most of what you guys put together here. I don't want to discount Ian's role here. But I want the process to take us there. I don't want to have a predetermined outcome.
Okay, that's fair.
You follow? You understand what I mean? I mean, if the process brings us there, okay, then I will support, my constituents. Okay? If the process doesn't take us there, I don't want to prescribe an outcome and then try to get there.
Okay. That's absolutely
So
fair.
what I'm hearing is that at the December board meeting, I'll have a presentation concerning the rest of it will be followed to the presentation.
Okay?
And I'm sure that you understand my questions much better than I actually said them. So I'm comfortable with
I
that together.
know where you're going. I just have to try to put everything in as logical a order from my standpoint as possible, because there's a lot of issues tied into a single bullet point. But I think I explained in my email to you that that's the discretion I would be looking for to do it. And of course, if I don't hit on something exactly the way you're looking, you can always ask me a question on that, and I can always elaborate, but I just don't want to do 42 bullet point
Yeah.
slides. I'm going to try to tie them together as best as possible. Okay?
Guys, I appreciate your feedback on this as always, and thank you, Carol. I learn something every time I talk to you.
Thanks for your effort, Brian, and for
Yes.
changing the
Yeah.
direction this was heading. I think we're
And
good.
Linda also had a big hand in it because she's has very strong opinions.
Oh, no, absolutely, and she actually did push me in that direction, but one thing I left out when I did my little preamble was, you made a comment during the 20th anniversary of Mackenzie, just offhanded comment during the day, that you were really pleased and you were kind of giddy about how happy and fun everybody was that day. And it was, and you actually suggested that maybe we should do this more frequently,
There we are.
maybe once a quarter. And I thought, geez, that's really, I think I misunderstood your attitude about these things. And that's why I was absolutely comfortable with, changing the approach and making this less adversarial and more collaborative and cooperative as a community. So that's what was behind it. So thank you guys, I appreciate it.
All right, excuse me. Do we have any other old business? Any new business? Okay, so then let's move to item 10, public comment. Yes, sir.
And I refuse to miss the end of the Mets game. I have 1 minute on 2 different subjects.
Do you have a score, by chance?
They're in LA, they probably just started.
No, I
No, it
started.
started
They
at 8.
started at 8?
Yeah.
My first comment is I
Football.
served on this board for 10 years. In the 1990s, I served with 8 superintendents. I probably had to get rid of 5, including super superintendent, who turned out not to be that super. This guy is the hardest working superintendent I've ever seen. Board, let's not wear him out. We've done some good things this year. We did the pre-K, we did the brochure, we got a physics teacher, we have AP classes. There are certain philosophical things that people may want to pursue, but those are down-to-earth things. They're going to help us in the future. They're going to help us bring the state aid in. The second thing I want to say is the auditor's report, of course, is very informative. Of course, nobody understands what he's talking about. But anyway, he says we don't have a whole lot of money in our coffers. But Eldred is a rich school district. The money doesn't reside in our coffers, it resides in our community. The wealth in this school district, the property wealth, is one of the reasons we don't get a lot of state aid. So that can be tapped into at some point. Now, we don't have a lot of money to throw around, so we are actually, in my estimation, ahead of the curve, because the other school districts are going to come to the point where we are now. We're learning to live within our means. We're learning to work together as taxpayers and the employees of the school district. So we're actually way ahead of the game.
3-2, by the way, Mets.
3-2 Mets. Bottom of the 6. Bottom of the 6.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me get,
I'm gonna put these
your name up first.
My name is Ariana Gingle, and I'm here to ask a question for the Eldred Little League for the soccer field. We had our first board meeting of the 2016 season, and we were just curious if there's any way that we'd be able to use the soccer field for the 2016 season for the T-ballers and for the baseball.
What you need to do is, on the website, there's a facilities use form. If you can't find it, you can call my office and we can direct you to it or send you a copy of it. You'd have to fill out the form first. We've never had that specific request. It would require a certificate of insurance from the organization, and that would be the first step. And then we would have to probably sit down and discuss logistics, et cetera. The key thing is that it doesn't interfere with any other activity we're doing. It's in the spring you're talking about. I don't think it would. My athletic coordinator is not here, so I'm talking off the top of my head, but I honestly don't think it would. But as long as there's nothing that would preclude it, we would always grant the permission to use it. Okay, so if you just fill out the form and attach a certificate of insurance from your parent organization and send that in, we'd sit down, look it over, and Ms. Lewis, myself, and Ms. Keegan will review it.
Okay, thank you.
Any others? Yes, Ms. Neal?
We do laugh
We
and
do?
play games and have fun.
Yay.
The standards are the structure of what we need to do. Just saying.
But I don't dance.
Honestly, I don't think I can handle that emotionally. But I do on Fridays in the lobby.
Yeah.
So,
Big old
how many
touche.
15?
That's one reason I'm not here on Fridays, I'm here Tuesdays and Thursdays.
You might have to sing. By the way, Justin Glodish and Nicole had their baby yesterday.
Oh, very good.
I think all the babies are born.
Yes, Emma had her baby,
Thank
Amy
goodness.
had her baby, Laura had her baby, and hopefully they'll all get back to work soon.
No, not saying a word. Any others? Yes, we'll get to you. 1 second. Yes,
Hi,
sir.
my name is Beth Dearman. I just had a couple ideas about, I've been coming to the board meetings for the past couple months as much as I can, and, I really appreciate how much work you guys do, and also the fact that I feel like there have been more people coming to the meetings. And, I've just been contemplating how can we continue to have more people come to these meetings, be informed, get excited about what's going on. I know, right? And I love the fact that you guys have started having these presentations at the beginning of the meetings with Owen Anderson and Mrs. Nealon last month talking about the program you did over the summer and the coding program, and then with the pre-K, can't go wrong with 4-year-olds. But I'm wondering if maybe we could start including students on these little presentations as well, not only the staff, but having different groups from around the district represented and coming in and just sharing 5 minutes with you guys about what they're doing. Be it, a group from the, one of Mr. Glodish's singing groups, coming and sharing a song with the board, or kids from the high school who are in the SAD program just coming in presenting to you guys for 5 minutes just to say, this is who we are, this is what we're doing. And maybe that would get the kids more involved in the process, but also their parents would have to come to the meeting because their children are here, and so slowly but surely maybe we could build a bigger group of people who would come on a more regular basis.
It's a nice thought.
I love that.
It really is, yeah, it's very good.
Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
Okay. I don't know if I have to take turns. We all take turns, yes, be respectful. There's a lot of discussion tonight, or starting discussion about budget, and really being able to live within our means and focus on making sure that we're on a path that will continue to have the district move forward and have the students continue to excel. I am a music therapist, and music is very, very important to me. And I also am very aware that music and arts-based programs are one of the first things that get cut from most school districts. It's kind of the first thing on the chopping block. And I know that's not necessarily the case here because we very much value that. But just so that it is on the record, I wanted to make you guys aware that recently the University of Kansas put out a research study that was both used quantitative and qualitative, so it was a mixed methods study that came out that actually, there's so many anecdotal stories about how music affects academic achievement, but this is an actual mixed method study that took 4 years to complete that has undeniably proven that music programs in the schools increase academic achievement, decrease behavioral issues within the school, and I had planned on printing it out and giving you guys a copy of it, but of course I ran out of ink about halfway through. And so, Bonnie, I was hoping I might be able to email you the link to the PDF, and then you could, just in case, a little light reading, on Friday night. But, I just wanted to put it out there. I know that we, as a district, are huge supporters of the arts, and I
very much appreciate that, and that's one of the reasons why we decided to move here when we were looking to build our house. So, so thank you for that, and I hope it continues, and, but I just wanted to share that information with you guys as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you
look
for
forward to,
listening.
look forward to getting that link.
Yeah.
Can I ask you how you said that's one of the reasons you decided to move here?
Sure,
How
so,
did you find out about Eldred?
about Eldred, so I'm a little type A, and, shut up, Tim. And meticulous, and I like to make lists and graphs and charts and things like that.
That's not a little, by the way.
I like,
Yes.
I like to call it a quirk.
I get it.
Yeah, but, so we went through and made, talked about all the different school districts in the county, we wanted to stay in Sullivan County, and really just did a pros and cons list, and that was one of the big things on.
Where are you from originally?
I'm from right outside of Philadelphia,
Oh, okay.
and my husband's from the eastern end of Long Island, and we both at that time worked at Center for Discovery.
Oh, I see.
So I'm still there, he's elsewhere now, but, so we wanted to be close and everything, and it just, Eldred was, small from what I was used to, but the level of academic, integrity of the district and, the music program and the arts programs were really what I looked at. My husband looked at sports, but I was more concerned about the music programs, and so did research, had a friend who worked in the district, interviewed her for like 2 hours, and now we live in Eldred.
That's why the brochure and the Facebook page and all the PR and all the outreach, I mean, I know it's only 50 to 100 jobs, they say total, but we'll take our fair share of that, you know?
That's right, we will.
Quite frankly, he never indicated that they thought anybody would ever come as far south as us.
We want to mention.
They said Monticello and
Yeah.
Paulsboro.
Because a lot of people will do what you did and look at the school
Look at those
districts.
school districts, there's no way in hell. Parents
Listen.
from, I'm sorry. I'm on video.
To the minutes now.
Okay.
Go to TAs.
Hi, I had 2 quick questions. The audit report that we got, I know that the board's got copies of that. Is that open to the public, or could I actually get a copy?
You have to see Miss Lewis.
Griffin, you can borrow my copy. And my other question, because I'm not sure if it's in here, what was the cumulative deficit we had for the lunch program? And what was the number for it?
It was like 50.
We said
40
42.
now.
Oh, that's right, it wasn't quite 50, it was under.
It is in the audit report.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what page, but it is actually in the audit report. I don't know if it's in the presentation, it's in the audit report.
In the
Here,
presentation.
Griffin, take this.
Well, are you gonna start
Oh,
with the?
I have a
That's
copy.
what it is. There's a slide in there, so
It's a slide, that's what he spoke from.
Here it is, right
But I don't need it.
Oh,
But you can keep that, you don't look at the whole slide thing.
Phone services. I think we.
Okay, any other public comment? Then we need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any questions, comments, concerns? Brian?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
I'm doing yes. And I'll say yes. Good night.
Go
ladies and
Mets.
gentlemen.
Good night.
New York City Herald.
All right, sounds good, sounds good. We're getting down there, like I said, Saturday night, he's trying to decide whether he's going to stay there or stay.
Say again?